What's good, y'all? CODI here with another review of Elite Chris 35's Minecraft Survivor series, this time being an extensive deep dive into Season 2 Roraima, the Mesa Outback. For those who didn't watch my Season 1 review, this review will be essentially a play-by-play of the season. Obviously, I recommend just watching the season yourself, but this will be a meticulous look at the season, episode by episode, giving my thoughts along the way. I've got links in the description for Elite Chris 35's channel, the Season 2 playlist, and the MC Survivor Wiki. Do be warned that the wiki does contain spoilers for all seasons of Minecraft Survivor, so do navigate that at your own risk. In regards to this review and future reviews, I want to make this aspect clear. I will never spoil a future season. Because I've watched the entire series before, I know about returning players, I know how those returns go, but I will not be talking about those here. However, I will give myself the ability to discuss past seasons. Therefore, the events of Season 1 are completely fair game in this review, and I may and likely will spoil parts of that season in this review. Last thing of note, I will be following this video with a player ranking where I rank the games played by each player of the season based on how I feel they played on this particular season. With all of that preamble out of the way, let's get started on this very, very long review. Naturally, it all begins with episode 1, That's Super Sketchy. Chris, the host of the series, introduces us to the new season. Unlike Season 1, which had 12 castaways, this season will have 14. It will last for 30 days, and it will be set on Mount Roraima. For clarity's sake, just like I mentioned in the Sherwood review, no, the season is not actually 30 days for the players sitting at their desks. These are recorded in one very long recording session, and for the sake of this video, I may bring up the day counter every now and then. I believe now that I'm in the recording process, I don't think I bring it up at all, but maybe I'm wrong. But it's also just like not something that I feel the need to keep constant tabs on. And I will also say that because I've finished the season and I've watched the reunion, I know that this season, I believe it was said to be about 8 hours. So yeah, 8 hours of filming, to be clear. After briefly detailing the way the show works, with the contestants competing in challenges and voting each other off, we get our first confessional of the season coming from Echo on the Piedra tribe. Echo talks about being a bartender and how that's going to help him in the game, where he's pretty physical, but being in the bartender business, he has a lot of social skills. These social skills are going to help him within the context of the game. He says that he wants to be likable and he wants to not be looked at as a threat if he can help it. We shift to an Arcia tribe member in confessional called Vision. Vision says that he likes to play soccer, and he also contrasts Echo immediately. Where Echo directly mentioned the concept of wanting to be likable, Vision says outright he wants to be the villain and that he'll be able to make it far into the season so long as he plays it smooth. We cut to Jerry, also from the Arcia tribe, who immediately comes off as a fun character, saying that he is, quote, I am just a likable little shit. And he talks about how if he can just get past the first few votes, he's going to rip the mask off and people aren't going to like what they see. He alludes to a hidden side of him outside of his more friendly, likable self, which I will say, this is very clearly just a reference to Dr. Will on Big Brother All-Stars, the US Big Brother All-Stars Season 7. It's not important for this review, I just figured I'd mention that. We jump back to a Piedra member with Walker, where he opens up telling us his basic strategy. He needs an alliance with someone on his tribe, lest he be the first one voted out of the game. Our third Arcia confessional then comes from Jakal, who talks about being an unemployed male stripper, and that he's gonna screw over people based entirely on things that have nothing to do with strategy. He's also gonna do whatever he wants because he wants to be a great character, is pretty much what it is. What it comes down to. Our last confessional of this little introduction here comes from Shay, who talks about not wanting to be on a tribe with all ranks because he is so annoying she wants to take a shotgun to his head. Which I'll say now that we've ran through these, I think the step up from Season 1 to 2, just in the cast, is already apparent. Where Season 1 did have some fun characters with the likes of Bunboy, Dizzy, Angie, and Kyle, had some more rootable figures with the likes of Jack and John, I can already say this cast does feel a bit more vibrant as a whole. After this, Chris concludes the introduction of the season by telling us that we have something new for Season 2, where a lot of my Season 1 review was just talking through the challenges and tribals, as well as talking through the confessionals, and that will largely stay the same here. This season, they are also have the ability to look at the conversations between the players, which will then obviously continue for the rest of the series, which I will say made my life a lot harder. But either way, it does allow for the strategy of the game to be more in our face rather than having to kind of piece the puzzle together ourselves, having this more background story about Andrea and Jack running the tribes the way they did in Sherwood. After this segment, we get the cast credits, where through the power of MC Survivor Wiki, as well as the cast assessment video from Elite Chris 35 himself, itself, the castaways of the season in order of appearance in the credits is, on the Arcia tribe, Chrysanthemum, a 16-year-old flower enthusiast from Virginia, Jackal, a 15-year-old exotic dancer from Newcastle, Thomas, a 14-year-old bellhop from California, Jervy, a 16-year-old background vocalist from Ecuador, Jerry, a 20-year-old sports marketer from Kentucky, Allranks, a 17-year-old fast food worker from Wisconsin, and Vision, a 14-year-old soccer player from Ohio. On the Piedra tribe, we have Echo, a 17-year-old bartender from New Jersey, Nifty, a 17-year-old furry from Wisconsin, Alex, a 15-year-old janitor from the United States, Shay, a 14-year-old queen bee from the United Kingdom, Caleb, a 15-year-old cameraman from Florida, Ben, a 14-year-old superfan from the United States, and Walker, a 13-year-old actor from Texas. If any of those ages and job titles mixed does not feel right to you, it's because they can obviously lie about their quote-unquote jobs, where the titles are just what production uses for them in their confessionals. Following the credits, Chris welcomes the cast to the Mesa Outback and introduces the audience to all of the players by name, with Thomas not getting his buff on immediately causing a small pause that will surely never be brought up again. Afterwards, we are thrown into our first reward challenge of the season, Race to the Top, where castaways will race up the scale of a mountain and be met with a choice. Complete the parkour on the left first and be rewarded with diamond shovels that can be used in the first immunity challenge of the season, as well as a chest containing some potentially useful items, which is obviously something that we kind of saw back in season 1 when Andrea got the diamond shovels for her team in the first episode. However, they can also choose to compete in the parkour to their right, where there are 2 immunity necklaces stationed at the end, one for each tribe, where the player to complete the course first will win individual immunity at their first tribal council. Obviously, this means that 2 players will gain individual immunity, one on the Piedra tribe and one on the Arcia tribe. Chris then tells the cast to make the choices quickly, instructing them to all go now. Nifty and Alex grabbed the diamond shovels first for the Piedra tribe. Allranks just about gets the immunity necklace for Arcia, but he's beaten out within seconds by Jervy, who claims the necklace, where we then see Walker gain immunity on the Piedra tribe. After the challenge, we are taken to the Piedra tribe, where everyone is talking together, congratulating Walker on his immunity and the tribe in general for winning reward. The tribe asks who wants to dig under the tribe mat, only for Echo to dull their worries, saying that he's already on it with several tribe members watching him dig underneath it. We get a Ben confessional telling us that it's day 2 and being proud of the win from his tribe. He tells us that he hasn't personally aligned with anybody yet, but he suspects that others may already be talking, which is fantastic because it just immediately shows Ben as being a rather paranoid player in the game. After Echo says that there isn't shit under that tribe mat, Nifty begins taking in the scenery and looking out at the wonderful world, saying, well, there's no trees. Echo asks the group if they want to do introductions, saying that he is Echo and he's a turtle, to which nobody seemed to listen, which was kind of funny. Shay gets a confessional claiming that when they got back to camp, the atmosphere around everyone was awkward and that she felt like for the first time in her life, she didn't know what to say. Where for her, this is the first time she's playing a game like this where she doesn't really know people. She also laments that she doesn't want to screw up on her first impressions and come off as a bitch because then people would want to vote her out. So her plan instead is to lie low and let the cards fall how they may. I think that there is an interesting takeaway from this confessional where, because this is a Minecraft Survivor, people will know each other. That's just how it goes. Where obviously there is real Survivor, the actual television product, but there are also these things called orgs, O-R-G, and an S at the end of it if you want to, or online reality games. This is one such org, but obviously it's a recorded and edited version. I can personally vouch for orgs because years ago I used to play Discord survivors. Man, take me back. Those were the days. And fun fact, I won't say who until we get to their season, but I did actually play a Discord survivor with one of the Minecraft Survivor contestants. But again, it's not on this season. It's in a later season. I'll talk about that whenever we get there, which will be it'll be a hot minute before we get there. But either way, in my experience with those orgs, I would run into familiar faces and play games with people I'd played previous unrelated seasons with. I think that is something that is important to consider when watching these Minecraft Survivor seasons, though, where we have a perfect example already with Shay's comment about Allranks in her earlier confessional, where she did not want to be on a tribe with him because he's annoying. We, the audience, have never seen the two of them interact, but based on her comment, it's pretty clear that they have some sort of history betwixt them. This is really just a small note, but I do think it is an interesting added layer to the strategy of the game, because these people are not necessarily strangers to one another, although it may appear that way at first glance. Either way, Chris lets the Piedra tribe know that he's about to drop their reward crate, which Walker takes all of the items out without telling his tribal was inside, and then he immediately gets called out. Earlier, Chris alluded to potential clues for immunity idols in the chest, and Nifty is quick to note that Walker took everything out of the chest, including those potential clues. Walker then gets a confessional saying that he doesn't want to be the villain, especially immediately, but he feels really good. He already has the immunity from the initial challenge, so he knows that he's going to be safe for the first tribal, and now he also has the clue to the idol, which he thinks nobody knows about. But obviously, the entire tribe is sketched out by this. He hopes that the others don't view him as a snake, but it's obviously he would want the idol for himself. We see Nifty, Caleb, and Ben digging underground, where Nifty talks about how they've run into lava monsters, cave spiders, and some sort of new species in their cave adventures, despite us being able to see the extent to which they've dug from the surface, which is a fun little moment, with Nifty closing out the scene saying that there's some, quote, really riveting stuff happening in this cave, to which I obviously agree. It's truly riveting indeed. Echo gets a confessional following this. He hopes that his fellow tribe mates are seeing Nifty as a leader figure, since Nifty is seemingly taking charge here, which puts him in the background where he wants to be, and then immediately starts crashing out about how he has shit people on his tribe, and that they're going to lose every challenge in a similar vein to Allium from the previous season, but hey, at least he got along good with Shay. And then he starts crashing out again, but this time specifically about Ben, saying that Ben is being paranoid about going home first, and claims at the end that by bombarding him with these questions, Ben is inching closer and closer to being on Echo's vote out first list. We then move over to the Arcia tribe, where shockingly, everyone is talking about not wanting to vote out anyone and hoping to win every challenge like Poppy did before them, with all the tribe members pretty much defending why they went for the immunity necklace individually. Jervy, the person who did win the necklace, gets the opening confessional of the tribe, saying that his thought process during the challenge was, fuck it, maybe the other tribe already has rewards, so he'll just have to take the safety for one round, since doing so and having that safe round is better than having no safe rounds at all, obviously. We cut back to camp, where Jakal is ranting about listening to really bad songs about Survivor players, presumably available on YouTube somewhere, I'm sure, before playing it for the tribe to hear in all of its glory. All Ranks talks in confessional, saying that he's worried about Jervy winning the immunity necklace, where this kind of goes back to what I talked about earlier with Shay about these players having potential history, where according to All Ranks, Jervy was the one person he was worried about coming into the season, but really he should be worried about Shay and her shotgun allegations, but I digress. He's frustrated that not only was he close to winning immunity, only to have it sniped from him, but of all people to lose it to, it was Jervy. He talks about not wanting to start an alliance though, and that in the meantime, everyone is just kind of building around the camp. Back in that camp, whilst everyone is talking together, we see Vision come down the mountain and move over to a small pond, where he digs down and finds an idol. He immediately jumps into a confessional saying that he found the idol after seeing an outstanding spot in the pond, and having seen it, he knew it must have been something. Directly following that, we see a conversation between Vision and Jervy, the first actual conversation between contestants that I'm going to have to talk through, and there's a lot. But either way, Vision is blatantly saying, do you want to form an alliance? To which Jervy immediately says that, yeah, sure, well, that idol thing was super sketchy though. And Vision then explains himself, immediately asking for a final 2 deal, to which Jervy agrees, but thinks they should consider adding Chris and Thomas to the alliance. I guess I should clarify that I do mean Chrysanthemum. If you haven't noticed, Chrysanthemum is a mouthful, and I'm not going to call him that every single time I have to bring him up, because I will have to bring him up a lot. He's a player. So please do your due diligence and listen to the context clues to differentiate between Chris the player and Chris the host. If they are both like in a similar scene, like at a tribal council, for example, throughout the review, I will refer to it as Chris the player and Chris the host. So if I don't mention it though, I'm hoping that it's pretty obvious which one I'm talking about. But either way, speaking of Chris the player, following that conversation between Vision and Jervy, we see Chris, All Ranks, Jerry, and Jakal all talking by some water, where they're all suspicious about someone having found an idol. Obviously, that suspicion is immediately directed towards Vision and Jervy, who had gone off to talk by themselves. Jerry lets everyone know that Vision had messaged him asking to talk right before Jervy joins in the conversation, saying that he found the empty chest, wants to know what happened, just for Jakal to immediately be on the offensive, saying, oh, okay, well then you found it. With that, we are then thrown into a Jakal confessional, where he basically just doubles down, saying that he doesn't give a hell who has the idol, but it's obviously Jervy. He says that he's suspicious of Jervy and Vision, with them being very tribe strong and wanting to win, to which Jakal blatantly says no, that's boring, and pleads that they unalive themselves. We're back in the tribe camp, where Vision talks about his frustration about being an alternate, only for Thomas to chime in and dunk on him a little bit by saying he's expected Vision to be a backup. Where I guess real quick, I'll bring up the concept of alternates/backups. Essentially, the way casting works is that the producers will have a cast in in mind and set the recording date and time. However, if one of the contestants cannot make it the last second, they will have backup players on standby ready to be brought in if they need to. That's what happened here, where some unknown player was unable to make the recording for whatever reason, and that allowed for Vision to be on this particular season. I will now say as well that we are already seeing an upgrade from season 1 to 2, where these camp segments feel a lot more filled, where in season 1 the camp life segments really were not of much substance, but here they've made a decent sized bulk of the episode, and I appreciate that, especially in the premiere. We move on to the first tribal immunity challenge of the season, Sand Monument, a challenge that will require a lot of teamwork and communication from the players. There are 3 sand pits for each tribe, with base blocks, ores, and wools respectively being hidden in each sand lot. At the end of the challenge lane, they need to peek behind the wall to look at a monument, and will use the materials found in the sand to recreate the monument at their tribe station. Chris then tells the Piedra tribe that because they won the diamond shovels in the reward challenge, they can use those here. Because there are 7 tribe members per tribe, 2 players will work on each sand pit, and 1 player will be designated as the builder, with Echo being the builder on the Piedra tribe and Jakal taking the lead on the Arcia tribe. Jakal was complaining about misplaced slabs and that he hadn't been given them, only for Thomas to say that he was the one who placed one of them down, which ultimately leads to Echo winning the challenge for the Piedra tribe, making them safe from tribal council. We close out the challenge with a confessional from Caleb of the Piedra tribe, saying that the challenge was good and that everyone worked together, but he wants to start playing the game proper, leading to this possibly Kyle-like trajectory for him, where in Sherwood we saw Kyle's tribe dominate the early game, only for Kyle to constantly complain about that because by winning so many pre-merge challenges, it really stalled his ability to play the game at all. We are then back on the Arcia tribe, with Jakal being really vocal and saying what's on his mind, that he's not just gonna vote for whoever made the mistake with the slabs, but not owning up to it is really pissing him off. To which Thomas immediately says, like, yeah, I'm the one who screwed up, to which Jakal just seemingly didn't hear him during the challenge, or right now, where he just keeps talking about the situation only for someone else to bring it up, like, yeah, Thomas already said that it was him, to which Jakal is relieved that at least somebody owned up to it. Ranks then speaks in confessional, raging about the challenge loss and being frustrated at needing to go to the first tribal, and he's trying to figure out who threw the challenge, where obviously we know it was Thomas, but I don't think he was intentionally throwing it here. I think that it was a genuine mistake on Thomas's part. Either way though, he then brings up Thomas and how he didn't even get his buff on at the marooning, and maybe he should be the one to go since he seemingly lacks a fundamental understanding of the mechanics in Minecraft. We see Thomas, Jervy, Vision, and Chris all in a talk together, where Thomas says he's down for whatever, clearly knowing that at least some of the votes will be coming his way given his challenge screw up, and Jerry's name comes up for being the weakest competitor on the tribe. Vision says that if they don't get all ranks this round, they have to get him out the next time. Despite this, we then see all ranks and Vision talk, where Vision tells him that he should join an alliance with himself, Jervy, and Thomas, continuing the campaign to send Jerry home, to which All Rank says he's down. We get Vision's third confessional of the season, coming off of the immunity challenge. He didn't really know where everybody stood, thinking he was on the bottom of the tribe, but he had to turn the game around and put in work to do the talking on most of the tribe, where he's immediately undercut by All Ranks in his third confessional, saying the Vision told him he'd be at the bottom of the alliance if he went with them, which is ridiculous, obviously, to which he says it's a stupid move to go with them and that he wants to be calling the shots, not following orders. We cut to a chat between All Ranks, Jakal, and Jerry, where the 3 of them want to boot Thomas for being the weakest and screwing up on the challenge. Chris then joins the call with the 3 asking what happened, only for him to respond and his audio cutting out, which is funny. Jakal calls out that he's cutting out the worst possible time here, and he just tells them, like, hey, just message me. To which Chris obliges, tells Jakal that Vision, Jervy, and Thomas are all planning to vote Jerry, and then boot All Ranks in the following round. Shockingly, Jerry and All Ranks not on board with this plan. Vision then begins messaging Jerry asking to talk, which Jerry just continues to stay in the same chat he's already in. Jakal then brings up the options they have. Obviously, Jerry has immunity, and Jakal is convinced that Jerry has the idol. So they can either boot Thomas for the sake of challenge strength, or they can vote Vision, being a far more straightforward vote. Jerry then rants in confessionals, saying that his tribe are stupid and questioning what he did wrong to get himself targeted. He says he's really putting his trust in this small group of himself, Jakal, All Ranks, and Chris, and that if that trust is misplaced, he'll be following Miller's footsteps, going home first despite not really doing too much. We end the tribe segment with Chris's first confessional. He's just not really worried about this vote since he's in a swing position, with both trios wanting him to work with them. We then begin tribal with a callback to the marooning, with Thomas taking a bit longer than everybody else to get himself settled, and then Chris the host opens up the tribal, asking Jervy how camp was following the challenge, asking if there was some miscommunication or anything surrounding the loss, to which Jervy says that Thomas owned up to their mistake. Vision says that he's heard his name going around and that he's worried as a result, but he won't say who he's voting for, just that he's voting for the weakest person on the tribe. To which Jerry then perks up saying, "Oh, so that's why you're targeting me?" And Vision just says, "No." Allrank says that he's proved himself in challenges and shouldn't be going home tonight, specifically under the assumption that the vote is being based on challenge strength. Chris is then asked about the communication issues in the tribe, to which he says that the communication issues in the challenge do play a role in his vote tonight. Thomas is then asked right afterwards if coming clean about his screw up was the right play, to which he says yeah, especially early on in the game, taking responsibility is a good thing. He doesn't think that one screw up in one challenge means that he needs to be the one to go. He also notes that he knows it's early, but voting out the strong competitors is a very viable option for the tribe. Jerry then notes that the smartest thing to do is to not vote out the strong competitors, because by doing so it simply leads to a more tribal council experiences. Jakal comments that he agrees with Jerry's mentality, but he also thinks about overconfidence and that the person shitting their pants the most is probably the one staying. Vision then stands up and says he has something to say, only to walk in front of the tribe, saying that he's heard his name floating around and that he has found the idol and they should be worried, which leads us into the vote with a great voting confessional from Jervy being upset the Vision would reveal he had the idol in the first place when it could have been used for a blindside. Vision does play the idol for himself, negating one vote, with 3 votes landing on Jerry and 3 votes landing on Thomas, meaning that there is a 3-3 tie with Vision's nullified vote against him. Chris then explains the rules of a tie since it didn't happen at all in Season 1. The tribe will now go to a revote. Jerry and Thomas, the players in the tie, are not allowed to vote. This is because they cannot vote for themselves, so their votes would just cancel each other out. The other members of the tribe will then cast a second vote, and they can only vote for Jerry or Thomas. Jakal, the player who originally voted for Vision out of spite, decides to side with Chris and Allranks to vote Thomas out. Also, Vision and Jervy keep their votes on Jerry. But with that, we do lose Thomas. Coming into this rewatch, I was actually kind of looking forward to Thomas, where obviously he is the first boot, but in comparison to the other first boots across the seasons, I ranked him relatively high. Where the main thing I credit Thomas with is the tie of it all, where he was in theory able to get half of the tribe on his side. The issue is that that's not really the case, having watched it this go around, where Jakal and Chris were never on his side, and it is in a position where Jakal voted Vision because Thomas tricked him into doing so. The tie genuinely only happens because Jakal is Jakal and wanted to vote Vision, so he voted Vision. That being said, the only thing I knock Thomas with is his challenge screw up, which, I mean, yeah, he screwed up, but also that's really the only mistake he made in the game. He owned up to it multiple times, he had loyal allies with both Vision and Jervy on his side, and he's also unlucky that those two were his alliance members in the first place. With him being unlucky that Jervy won the immunity necklace in the initial reward challenge, and being unlucky that Vision found the idol. Especially being unlucky later that Vision plays the idol and reveals the idol to the tribe, where it's been revealed through just looking through the comment section on different videos in this specific season, that the original plan was Vision, to have Vision go home in a 4-3 vote, but they had to flip it on to Thomas when Division broke out the idol. And this is even proven further during the next episode in the last time on Survivor segment at the very beginning, where Chris alludes to the fact that the majority was originally going to vote for Vision. At the end of the day, Thomas is still a first boot, but genuinely, like, he's a pretty good first boot, all things considered. Either way, with that, we begin episode 2, Rock Solid, on the Piedra tribe, where the tribe is just kind of talking together about what to do with their actual camp, about where to build a house or a base, and all of that stuff. We see Nifty get a confessional after not getting any in the premiere episode, where he shows us his little immunity stand that he has for the tribal immunity on top, and talks about how he needs the confessional in order to boon his Edgic to a CPP. Put a pin in that, I'll circle back in a second. He talks about being the leader of the tribe having stepped up, and that he's the one who's kind of gelled the tribe together, whether people realize that or not. To go back to the Edgic thing, he's talking about this thing in real Survivor that we call the Edgic. Edgic is a combination of edit and logic, or essentially people with too much time on their hands, and am I really one to talk given this video? Either way, as I was saying, people people will use the edited show to attempt to determine the winner of the season before they're crowned. Obviously, getting content at all is good, but the type of content varies greatly. We can get personal segments from contestants, strategic content, funny content, content that makes you scratch your head wondering why the hell this is in the show at all. Edgic is very complex. I'm not going to delve into every little bit of it here, but I'll give you a rundown of the basics. Essentially, after each episode, a given player is given three things: a category, a favorability, and a number. The categories are INV for invisible, players that are pretty much nothing in the episode, think Nathan from Sherwood; UTR for under the radar, for players who are more inconsequential to the episode, but they are at least present, think like Finelli; MOR for middle of the road, for players who are remarkable in some way, but still aren't really the main character, think John; CP for complex personality, where we fully get them on the show and we see their thought processes, think Kyle; and OTT for over the top, these very present characters who are almost cartoon characters in one note, think like Bunboy. The favorabilities are called tones by the end of an episode, which are all fairly self-explanatory. PP is extremely positive, P is positive, M is mixed, no letter is neutral, N is negative, and double N is extremely negative. Importantly, both PP and NN are very rare. The number at the end just stands for visibility. Players who got very little airtime are 1, and players who hogged the episode are 5. So with that explanation being more than I meant it to be, what Nifty is saying when he bringing up the fact that he needs this confessional in order to make his Edgic better to a CPP, he means he wants to come off as a complex personality that is viewed in a positive light. If you're super curious about Edgic as a concept, just know that all of these are given out per episode. So you can imagine Nathan's from Sherwood as him being INV for eps 1 to 7, and something like UTR 1 or 2 for the final 2 episodes. Do note that there do exist Edgic charts for some seasons of MC Survivor. However, personally, A, I don't care much for Edgic, so I'm not going to be bringing it up very much, and B, there will be inherent spoilers by looking at that chart, so I highly recommend not doing so until you've finished watching the season you want to see the Edgic chart before. Wow, that went on longer than I thought, but it's a concept of Survivor, so I thought it'd be good to explain it at least once in one of these videos. Either way, we're back in the tribe camp where they're all discussing who they think went home from the Arcia Tribal Council, with them believing that Thomas is up for elimination and that all ranks Chakal and Jerry are all likely safe. We see Ben and Shay talking in the main chat about working together on parkour builds, getting into a minor argument here, but they're both all about tribe unity. Shay gets in confessional saying that Ben has been getting on her nerves recently and explains her side of things about her being the one to originally build the parkour, only for Ben to start adding to it and messing things up for her, only to go back into the tribe segment with Shay looking at the chicken saying, "Oh, these two just fucked," and then asked, "Did you have to put it like that?" only for her to retort like, "Well, I mean, that's what happened." And when her mic cuts out afterwards, Ben comments on it again saying he's not trying to be mean, but it is very noticeable. Through all of this, we're following Echo, which leads to his confessional opening up with, "Oh my god, this kid Ben," talking about how annoying Ben is. He's been looking for the idol, but Ben is constantly tailing him, which shockingly is upsetting Echo, which obviously is super fun. We then shake things up over to the Arcia tribe with Chakal in confessional saying that he voted Vision because he stuck to his word. He told Vision at Tribal that he'd be getting at least 1 vote that night, and that he should play the idol because of that. Through that, Chakal kept his word. He then talks about how Jerry stayed despite that southern ass accent annoying him and being on his pet peeve list, which is riveting stuff, obviously. All ranks Jerry and Vision are all on a call together where Vision talks about not wanting to waste his idol. Jervy is frustrated as well at Vision for telling everyone about the idol in the first place and viewing it as a dumb play, which he's right. Jerry then gets a small confessional talking about being grateful that he managed to talk to the right people at the right times, but the whole situation was really a wake-up call for him, that he now needs to sort of spread his wings a bit and be more social with the tribe as a whole. With that, we're sent back to Piedra with the music changing, where it's revealed to us that Alex is leaving the game. Nifty hands him a boat he can use to sail off the sea, where Chris thanks Alex, saying that he's glad that at least Alex showed up. Either way, we continue the scene with a Nifty confessional saying that abrupt quit was shocking to everyone, and he says that he wasn't planning to vote Alex in the first tribal had they lost, given that it was the two of them who had won the Diamond Shovel Reward Challenge in the first place. And with that, we lose Alex. Yeah. So in season 1 in Sherwood, Nathan was invisible for pretty much the entire season, but he did at least get confessionals in the end. Alex did not. We genuinely know nothing about Alex. We don't know how he was playing. We don't know who he was aligned with. We don't know who he was targeting. We know literally nothing because he quits the game really before it even started. Where Piedra has not gone to tribal, so there's genuinely nothing to say. And the fact that I've been able to make his eulogy even this long is nothing short of proof of my incredible scripting abilities. We're taken to the next reward challenge, High Tripwire, where there's a structure in the water with buttons on one side of an iron fence and trapdoors on the other side. Both tribes will select 2 players to be button mashers. By hitting the buttons, the trap doors on the other side will fall. The tribes will select 1 runner per round to be running on the doors on the other side of the opposing tribe's button mashers. The winner of each round will be the runner to outlive the other. The first tribe to score 3 points wins the challenge, winning another care package with camp supplies, an immunity idol clue, and a tribe advantage in the form of a visitation ticket, which will only be explained to the tribe that wins. The button mashers for Arcia are Jerry and All Ranks, and for Piedra it is Nifty and Walker. The first round is Echo from Piedra versus Jakal from Arcia, to which Jakal falls pretty much immediately. Next is Ben from Piedra versus Jervy from Arcia, with the round lasting a little bit longer, but Ben falls, tying up the score. Next is Caleb from Piedra versus Vision from Arcia, another solid round with Caleb pulling out the win, putting Piedra in the lead. Next up is Shay from Piedra versus Chris from Arcia, tying it up again, with the final round being Caleb versus Jervy, another close round, but it is ultimately Caleb that cinched the win for Piedra. We're back on Piedra again for the 3rd time. Walker takes the clue and reads it out loud, but Echo immediately runs off and finds the idol in public. Afterwards, Ben reads out the visitation ticket advantage. After the Piedra tribe wins their next immunity challenge, they can send 2 members off to sit in and observe both the camp life and tribal council of the losing tribe that round, with pretty much everyone saying they want to go on it. Echo gets a confessional, obviously talking about needing to use this now very public idol in a generous way since everyone on Piedra is so kumbaya. He wishes the idol could have been kept secret, but he'd obviously rather have it than not. We see Caleb and Echo talk amongst themselves. Caleb talks about wanting interesting players to stay in the season, essentially to get the bigger threats all together so that they can pick off the seemingly weaker players in their eyes with the likes of Shay and Walker. With Caleb also saying that pretty much no strategy has been happening on the tribe and he wants to get the ball moving. Echo then tells Caleb that he thought him and Nifty were going to go after himself, but Caleb reassures him that that is not the case. After their talk, it's time for the second immunity challenge, Obstacle Relay, a similar challenge to what we saw in Season 1, where there are multiple legs of the challenge. Both tribes will select 1 player to complete 1 of 6 legs. In order, the legs are parkour, mining, maze running, cobwebs, maze swimming, and running. After completing the first leg, they will light a netherrack block with a flint and steel, where they will then pass on the flint and steel to the next player. It is Chris and Caleb working on the parkour, with Chris completing it first, passing off the flint and steel to Jerry. As Jerry finds his netherrack, Caleb, who was behind, passes off the flint and steel to Ben. Jerry tosses to Jakal, whilst Ben passes it off to Nifty. With the Arcia tribe being in the lead, but still some miscommunication between Jakal and Vision follows, tightening the gap between the tribes. But it doesn't matter, as Vision passes it to All Ranks, who passes it to Jervy, with Jervy running down, jumping the staircase, and lighting the final netherrack, winning the immunity challenge for Arcia, with Piedra being fairly close, but they were behind for pretty much the entire challenge, even though they made up some time at points, and they also failed even though Jakal was clearly trying to throw this challenge. We see Caleb, Nifty, and Echo talking together on a dock called the Rock Solid Dock at the Bay, with Caleb confessing that he knows he screwed up, where he's really the one to put the tribe on the losing side in the beginning, only for Piedra to truly never recover from that lost time. But Echo and Nifty both quell his worries a bit. Nifty brings up Shay's name, where really for the 3 of them the vote is between Ben or Shay, with Walker having immunity, and Nifty says that they should loop Ben in on the plan for booting Shay. Caleb gets a confessional talking about being worried for losing the challenge, but he does have faith in his alliance with Echo and Nifty. He also thinks that there's a chance he goes home, but he thinks that he did already prove himself when he won 2 out of the 3 points in the reward challenge earlier in the episode. We cut to the other side of the tribe, with Shay, Ben, and Walker talking about how the other 3 had jumped into a call immediately, with them now thinking that they're on the bottom. With Shay openly voicing this and Ben agreeing with her, Walker says that the only way to save each other is to draw rocks. Put a pin in that, we'll get to it in a minute, but Ben is scared to do that and says it'd be better off if they could just pull somebody over. Okay, so what did Walker mean? Again, for the second time this episode, I need to explain more Survivor stuff. So we saw in the Thomas round what happens in the event of a tie, where because Thomas and Jerry both received 3 votes, everyone else had to vote again. However, in that tribal there were 7 people on that tribe, which led to the revote being a 3-2 vote. But what if there were only 6 people? In the situation that we have on Piedra, we have Echo, Nifty, and Caleb on one side, and Shay, Ben, and Walker on the other side. If the votes do fall 3-3, let's just say it falls on Ben and Caleb for the sake of example, if they do a revote and the situation results in a 2-2 tie, now we have a deadlock. Here's what that means for the game. In this situation, Ben and Caleb have 0 say. Echo, Nifty, Shay, and Walker then need to come to a unanimous decision openly. They need to all agree to vote out either Ben or Caleb. If a full consensus is not reached, they go to rocks. So the situation would look like this. Ben and Caleb, the two players up for elimination, are now completely immune. Walker, who won the immunity necklace earlier, is also immune. This means that Shay, Nifty, and Echo will draw rocks. One rock is colored differently than the others. The player that draws that rock will immediately be eliminated in the game as a punishment for not being able to get their vote through. With that explained, we cut back to Shay Confessional, where she talks about Caleb and Echo joining a call immediately, with Nifty joining them after, and says that Ben is being paranoid and that she really has no choice other than to work with Ben and Walker at this point, since the other three already seem close. Nifty and Ben have a conversation then at the dock, where Nifty talks about how they wanted Walker out, but with Walker winning immunity, that's gonna have to wait. Nifty then pretty much talks Ben up, saying that he likes his energy and wants to work with him because he brings something to the tribe that nobody else can, and says that he already convinced Echo and Caleb that the move is Shay tonight. We cut to Ben's confessional, saying that he's nervous. He and Shay are on the bottom, as he says, and thinks Shay is a good person and doesn't want her to go, but also talks about how, again, the three of Nifty, Caleb, and Echo were originally gonna vote Walker. From the way Ben is talking as well, it does feel like he would have been willing to cut Walker in this spot, but either way. The last conversation we see is between Echo and Shay, where Echo tells her point blank that she is the vote because Nifty and Caleb think she's the weakest on the tribe, and that Ben brings a better vibe to camp. But he extends an olive branch over to her, saying if she wants to make something happen, that he's willing to hear her out, with Shay telling him that they plan to vote out Caleb, leading to Echo ask if they should bring Ben into their conversation, but she kind of shuts him down a little bit, saying he should just go talk to Ben on his own. Echo then gets a confessional talking about his own worries. He knows that he's a threat with his idol and he might play it tonight just to be safe and to diminish the target on his back a bit, and then ends the pre-tribal segment saying he doesn't want Shay to go. Which at this point, the fate of the tribe seems to be in the hands of Echo and Ben, with this tribal likely coming down to their final conversation that we didn't get to see happen. Either way, we then move to tribal with Chris asking Ben about the general reaction of Alex's quit, and he just says that not much happened. They didn't do much. Walker says that if Alex was still here, he doesn't really know what would change. Shay talks about how the merge and pre-merge are very different, specifically because in the pre-merge section of the game, players are incentivized to keep the stronger challenge performers in the game. But come merge, that challenge strength is what paints a target on your back, so it's a real balancing act in that regard. Echo comments about being one of the stronger challengers, but possibly one of the weaker social players. Nifty noticed that the tribe split right after the challenge, with the tribe splitting into 3 and 3, as we've talked about previously, but thinks that if they could have reconciled as a group, things could be different. And Caleb takes ownership of putting the tribe at a disadvantage from the beginning, but he also brings up the reward challenge and his strength in that. He also blatantly says that he knows his name will come up tonight as a result of his poor performance in the immunity challenge. Echo, as he pretty much said he was going to do, plays the idol for himself, saying that he just wants to test where the players' loyalties lie, negating obviously 0 votes. Nobody was targeting Echo this round. The votes are read out, with Shay receiving 4 votes and Caleb getting the other 2. She does have a very fun exit from the game, popping off, and Caleb saying, "Oh my gosh, somebody's my new best friend and I don't even know who they are," obviously referencing Ben, who voted alongside him in this tribal. Either way, with that, we do lose Shay, which is really tragic this early in the season, but there's also more to it that I'm going to talk about at the end of this eulogy, where Shay just comes off as such an over-the-top character and definitely could have brought more entertainment throughout the season had she stayed. Honestly, I don't really think that she does much wrong. I think that she was in a tight spot where, based on Nifty's conversation with Ben, it does seem like Walker would have been the consensus boot had he not had immunity. I think her only mistake in the game really was not having that conversation alongside Echo and Ben, where by giving them that time alone, she allowed for them to really weigh their options either way. I think that had she been a part of that conversation, there's a decent chance of her staying in the game this round. But she's taken out over Ben for a few reasons. One, Ben is slightly better in challenges, so they say, which, is he? And Ben also brought, quote, better vibes to the tribe as a whole. I think there's also the aspect of Nifty and Caleb thinking Ben would be easier to flip onto their side rather than Shay. But again, I don't think Shay does that much wrong, but she also doesn't do too much right either. All of that being said, I watched the reunion a little bit before I started recording this video, and listen, like I said, Shay, super fun character, very over the top for the episodes that she was in, but also she was a top 3 fan favorite of the season. Like, he did a fan, or Chris, the host, did a fan favorite poll for at the end of the reunion, and Shay was top 3. She was top 2, and she only lost by a handful of votes. I don't understand. Again, really fun character, but also, come on. We begin episode 3, Can't Rely on Them, on the Piedra tribe with a Caleb confessional talking about having this really awkward conversation with Walker leading up to the vote, and having Hope surviving after Echo stood up, but obviously Echo then stood him up, playing the idol for himself, but it was all good anyways after Ben flipped. We then see Ben talking in confessional about him flipping, confirming that he's the one who did it, saying he took out Shay because Echo was desperate and he trusts Nifty. Nifty is up next, watching the day pass by, thankfully making the only Sherwood reference worth mentioning, obviously referring to Bun Boy's Nut Shack, thank God, where Nifty talks about every legendary player needing a structure, so he has his rock-solid dock at the bay, laughing to himself about it. We switch to the Arcia tribe with an All-Ranks confessional, who also references Sherwood, saying, thank God we're not Allium. Tragically, All-Ranks doesn't bring up the Nut Shack, and instead talks about being happy to have missed the vote, particularly because so many names had been thrown out around, including his and Chris's, to which we flip to Jakal, who immediately opens up his confessional, saying, I'm bummed we won the challenge, I'm actually so annoyed, with him telling us that he was trying to throw the challenge and voicing his frustration at doing the maze portion only to get the path right on his first try. Jerry and Jervy have a conversation about changing the game, with Jervy saying that they could form a new alliance between them, All Ranks, and Vision to boot Chris out of the game. Jerry and Vision then talk, with Vision asking Jerry if he wants to make a big move, and that the way to make a big move is obviously to side with him and Jervy, only for Jerry to just brush him off sarcastically, saying, oh, I should vote with you, who just tried to get me out, with Vision saying, yeah, but could I even beat you in a final 3? Only for Jerry to again say, like, dude, I don't care, I'm not looking at final 3 right now, we're at the final 11, my goal right now is to get to final 10, where Jerry, following this, goes into confessional, articulating that he went from being on the bottom of the tribe to now people coming to him asking for his vote, with him still not trusting the likes of Vision and Jervy, obviously. We cut to another Vision one-on-one, this time with Jakal, where Vision says that if Jakal flips to them, he could change the game in a second, only for Jakal to just lie here, saying that he voted Jerry originally, and then he flipped on the revote, attempting to convince Vision that it was either Thomas or Jervy who voted him originally, which is such a stupid lie. Like, why do this? I don't, like, I get that he's trying to, like, convince Vision that Jakal was on his side all along, but also, like, come on, man. Jakal is in confessional, saying that Vision is playing the game bipolar, where he essentially promised Jakal and Jerry each final 2 separately in his eyes. We see Jakal jump into a call with Jerry and Chris, where he proceeds to basically dunk on Vision and Jervy, with Jerry adding to Jakal's credibility, mentioning that those conversations that Jakal is disclosing are very similar in nature to the conversation Vision and Jervy had with Jerry. Vision then gets a confessional saying that he's playing crazy and talking to everyone and throwing out insane information, like about him having found a second idol, which, again, ridiculous. We see him have one of these ever important conversations with Jerry, where I just love this interaction. Vision leads with, not only did I find one idol, but I found another. It's in my ender chest. Only for Jerry to reasonably ask, oh, can I see it? Just for Vision to stutter before asking if they even have an ender chest, which obviously is a sign that maybe Vision's lying about the idol. Who knows? It's too good, man. Jerry and All Ranks talk, with Jerry pretty much calling Vision's bluff, saying that he's doing too much, but All Ranks says that if the second idol is real, then it feels like Vision is cheating. We cut to another Vision confessional, hoping for a second idol at this point because he's on the bottom and doesn't feel like anybody is listening to him, but he really wants either Chris or Jerry out, seemingly not really having a preference on which one goes first, so long as those are the 2 that go. Vision and Jervy then have a conversation about an idol clue that Vision found. Jerry, Jakal, and All Ranks are all on a call, while Jerry follows Vision around with this fun little editing trick where we flip back and forth between these 2 calls. All Ranks then lands himself another confessional, telling us that Jakal came to him wanting to throw the upcoming immunity challenge because of all the idol nonsense, but All Ranks thinks that that's stupid. Why do we want to go against an idol? We get to the next immunity challenge, and once Arcia sees that Shay was the vote out, Jervy yells out sexist pigs, which is great. Either way, that leads into the next immunity challenge called Arrow Dodgeball. I'm gonna gonna assume that you can figure this one out. They're playing dodgeball in Minecraft with the help of bows and arrows. First tribe to win 3 rounds wins the immunity. Because Arcia has one extra member in this spot, Jerry ends up sitting out of the challenge. And if you don't know dodgeball, I can't help you, man. Arcia wins round 1 pretty easily. Ben is able to secure the win in round 2 for Piedra, tying it up. Arcia dominates again, leading to a 2-1, with Jakal now running up and down in the middle, teasing the Piedra tribe, but it doesn't matter, with Arcia winning the challenge despite Jakal trying to throw it. Walker closes out the challenge, getting a confessional saying that he thinks he's probably going home tonight, crying in confessional about how the only way he'll stay tonight is if he can get Echo out, which surely means that he's gonna get Echo out. All Ranks then leads the Arcia segment with a confessional saying that it's great to win, but he's gonna tell Jakal that he was trying to throw the challenge and that by doing so he doesn't think Jakal will be mad at him. I'm combusting internally with these people, I'm not even kidding, is how Jakal opens his confessional, being so irritated that his tribe won immunity, where he ends his confessional saying he wanted to, quote, "I want to send that little cocky asshole bipolar whack job home." Classic Jakal. We then go back to Piedra with an Echo confessional ranting about how he misused his idol last tribal and that he's paranoid because of Ben, with Ben having told him the previous round that Echo could be the vote, leading to Echo playing his idol, and really just more of Echo ranting about Ben once again. We see the two lads talk, with Ben saying that Caleb trusts him, but Echo says that Nifty and Caleb are a tight duo. We see Echo get another confessional immediately following this, where he talks about being on the bottom of that strong trio from the previous round and that Caleb and Nifty are really tight and he wants to break that up. We see that duo then talking on the dock, where Nifty asks Caleb if tribe strength is still the main worry, to which Caleb says yeah, but Nifty then just shuts him down, saying that Walker is now against the wall. With Walker knowing that he's on the bottom, he has no choice other than to side with Nifty and Caleb, to which Caleb asks Nifty if he wants Echo, only for Nifty to double down and say, yes, absolutely 100% that is what I am telling you. Ben then gets a confessional afterwards, saying that Walker is on the bottom once again, but also regurgitates what Echo said about Nifty and Caleb being a tight duo, so the tribe dynamics are pretty simple here. On one side is Nifty and Caleb, on the other side is Echo and Ben, and once on the bottom now in the power position is Walker. Walker and Ben then talk, with Ben clearly trying to get Walker on his side to vote Caleb out, saying that if Walker doesn't vote Caleb, then Walker will be going home. Nifty then talks in confessional about this blindside he's attempting on Echo, who he believes will likely become a merge powerhouse if left in the game, and he wants to nip that in the bud now. We see Nifty and Walker next, to which Nifty tells him that he thinks he's convinced Caleb of the Echo plan. So long as Walker is on board, then they have the numbers. To which Walker screams, I think. Make some sort of noise. Walker says he's tired of people telling him to vote people and that he feels that if he doesn't write down the right name, he'll be going home. To which Nifty actually makes a pretty solid case here, telling Walker that Echo is targeting him with the evidence of Echo's character about Echo being all about challenge strength. Walker gets a confessional following this conversation, saying that he's sick and tired of the scrambling. He just wants to know what he should do, but he doesn't know because it's his decision. He just wants someone to tell him what to do, but multiple people are telling him different things. We then fast forward to the Piedra tribal. Nifty says that getting rid of the weak was good until they lost another challenge, so obviously they're doing something wrong, to which Chris chimes in, so you guys suck, which is great. Echo talks about how he was targeted during the immunity challenge. Walker says that he's once again sick and tired of the game and that if he doesn't vote right, he's probably going home. Caleb is up next, saying that he's expecting votes tonight because he got votes last round as well. Ben talks next about how it doesn't really matter who's good at challenges anymore. Nifty says that the tribe is messy and that they need a janitor. Echo and Caleb both think they're in danger as we lead into the vote. Chris then tallies the vote of this important tribal. First vote, Echo. Second vote, Echo. Third vote, Walker. Fourth vote, Walker. And with that, it's over, right? Because obviously Nifty and Caleb voted Echo, and Echo and Ben voted Walker, so clearly Echo goes, right? Final vote, Walker. With that, we lose Walker. What happened here? Well, we actually do know what happened here because of Walker's final words. Caleb and Nifty did vote Echo like they planned. Echo and Ben, on the other hand, did vote Walker. And Walker voted Walker. He voted himself out of the game because he couldn't handle it anymore. Walker's game is awful, quite frankly. Genuinely awful. He wins the immunity necklace in a reward challenge, gets the care package thanks to Nifty and Alex's tribal reward, to which he steals the clue with everybody clearly catching on. Alex quit, and he's then on the bottom of Shay and Ben in the following round, in a spot where Walker would have been the boot had it not been for the immunity necklace he won in the previous reward, which he wouldn't have had in the first place had Alex not quit. He then loses Shay after he fails to keep Ben in line. In the following rolling around. He's in the perfect position. He can do literally whatever he wants to do. If he wants to boot Echo, he can. If he wants to boot Caleb, he can do that too. Even further than that, if he wanted to boot Nifty, I have full confidence that he could have convinced Echo and Ben to do that, since their goal was to split up that duo, unlike Nifty and Caleb, who simply cared about getting Echo out rather than splitting up Echo and Ben. Walker loses his mind so much to the point that he decides to self-eliminate by voting himself out of the game, which is ridiculous. I genuinely think there's an argument that Walker's game is worse than Alex's. Alex didn't even do anything. There was nothing I can say about Alex, but Walker's on the bottom, set up to go home, gets into a power position where he literally votes himself out of the game. With all of that being said, as genuinely horrendous as this is as a game, clearly Walker voting himself out is not a game move, where the game simply got the better of him. That's the reality of what happened here, where he was safe in his first tribal council, but as soon as he didn't have that safety, he spiraled a bit. Nothing against Walker as a person or even really like a character on the show, because I do think that it's actually kind of riveting on the show to see something like this happen, but strictly as a game player, which is what I'll be talking about on the player ranking when I get around to doing that, it's the reality is that it's an awful showing in the game. But again, nothing against Walker as a person. I'm sure he's super duper nice. Next up, we have episode 4. We burned down all of their stuff. We start on the Piedra tribe with Echo and Caleb both joking in public, where Caleb talks about thinking he was going to get votes, only for Echo to say he thought he was gone as soon as he got that second vote. We get Echo's confessional, where he talks about how Ben informed him last second, right before the vote, that he heard Caleb talking to Walker about booting Echo, which then led to Echo scrambling last second. He says it's a shame because he trusted Caleb, but now he knows where he stands and he's coming after Nifty after that tribal. We move over to the Arcia tribe with a Jerry confessional. He makes it clear that he still doesn't trust Vision and Jervy, but he is at least in a good spot now, where he's having fun and enjoying his time in the game. He hopes that things stay that way for the time being. We see Arcia around a campfire all talking, where Chris is saying that he doesn't know which is worse, between the stress that comes with needing to vote someone out or the stress of waiting for the other tribe to meet back up so you can see who's left. Only for Jakal to speak his mind, saying, "I can tell you which one is more boring," leading to laughter throughout the tribe. But then he just keeps going, saying that he's been hoping for a challenge loss and that he's not going to bother lying about it. Reminder, he's talking to everyone on the tribe right now, which is so stupid. I mean, it's great TV, but it's a terrible game move. Either way, this obviously segues into a confessional from Jakal raging about Vision and how he wants to send Vision home, all the while Vision is in the background swimming in the water behind Jakal. And you can clearly see here, Chris, the host, is breaking character, where he's stifling his laughter while Jakal is giving this confessional. Clearly, at this point, Chris knowing that this particular confessional is going to have to make the edit. Either way, Jakal hopes for a swap or a merge or something because he's getting bored. Put a pin in that. We'll come back to it soon. We get a Chris confessional talking about how he's feeling good with his core 4 of all ranks Jerry, Jakal, and himself. He also says that Vision is trying to get him to trust him, but he's just simply not buying it. Afterwards, both tribes come together, and Chris leads them into believing they've merged, only for him to say that that is not the case. They are switching things up, telling every player to stand on a wool carpet and await further instructions. Okay, time to get back to that pin I talked about. So in Jakal's confessional, he said he wanted a swap or a merge to happen. We already saw what a merge is. We saw it back in Sherwood, so I don't need to bring that up. But the swap, that's new. So what's up with that? A tribe swap is pretty simple. Essentially, all contestants from all tribes will drop their buffs. Afterwards, just like the merge, they will draw a new one. Unlike the merge, however, rather than everybody getting the same buff, the colors will be different, as a swap just means that we're redividing the tribes. So to keep everybody on the same page, the remaining Piedra players at this point in the game are Caleb, Nifty, Echo, and Ben, whereas the remaining Arcia players are Chris, All Ranks, Jerry, Jakal, Vision, and Jervy. After the players reveal their new buffs, we get the new Piedra tribe consisting of Caleb and Nifty, as well as Chris, Jakal, and All Ranks. We also get the new Arcia tribe consisting of Echo and Ben, as well as Jerry, Vision, and Jervy. That's all for the swap, as the players now go back to their new tribes. We start on the new Arcia tribe with a Jervy confessional, who is happy because on both of the new tribes, the original Arcia members have the 3-2 majority. So in theory, whether this new tribe wins or loses, an original Piedra will be going home. He says that if anybody flips, he's going to be really upset. We see a conversation between Vision, Ben, and Echo, where Vision is basically just telling them that he already found the idol at this camp, but he also already played it, with Echo then telling him and pretty much the same thing, with Ben backing him up, saying that Echo already found it and played the Piedra idol as well. Ben gets a confessional now where he says that him and Echo are clearly on the bottom at this point, but he's glad that out of everyone on the OG Piedra, it was Echo that came with him to this new tribe. He then talks about Vision as if Vision is his savior, saying that if Vision is serious about wanting to work with Echo and him, that Vision will become his new best friend. We then flip to Echo and Jerry talking, where Jerry tells him point blank that he's just gonna let everything out, opening the conversation saying, I don't like these two shits. Phenomenal stuff, obviously, only for Echo to agree, not liking them either. Telling Jerry that Vision was talking to himself and Ben. Jerry then talks about Vision's idol play and how Vision and Jervy were targeting him in the original tribal. He also brings up Vision's potential second idol and the whole Ender chest, which is funny that we got a follow up on that plot point. Clearly, Echo and Jerry are down to work together, but Echo starts talking about how difficult it is to work with Ben and how Ben is already believing all of Vision's bullshit, saying that Ben is an idiot and doesn't get the game. We see the other tribe members in Ben, Jervy, and Vision talking. Ben is clearly being paranoid, rambling to both of them only for Jervy and Vision to tell him, like, man, just calm down, chill out, let's just go out there, we'll win immunity, we don't gotta worry about voting anybody out anyways. With Jervy coming off as super rational to me in this spot, where he doesn't give Ben a clear yes or no, clearly showing his hesitancy with flipping, which is the correct call in my opinion, where for Jervy here, his optimal move on this tribe is definitely sticking with the old Arcia members. Either way, we move to the new Piedra tribe with a conversation between Caleb and All Ranks, with All Ranks prying for information. Caleb tells him about how dysfunctional the old Piedra was, and the latest vote was a 3-2, with himself voting in majority, throwing Nifty under the bus, saying he probably voted Echo out alongside Walker. We get a Nifty confessional following this, saying that he's very worried about this tribe swap, but at least he still has Caleb. He reflects on the previous tribal, saying that he believes Walker must have voted himself, fully believing that Caleb didn't flip on him, which, to his credit, he's right. But I think this interlaced with Caleb's conversation at All Ranks clearly shows that Nifty has a lot more blind faith in Caleb than the other way around. Chris and All Ranks then talk about how they really got the better end of the stick here, and they talk about being worried about Jerry, and that Jerry probably wouldn't survive a tribal, so they really hope that Jerry can talk his way in with Echo and Ben. Despite all of this, they still want to win the challenge though, to keep themselves safe, even though they could just throw here, but whatever. Regardless, we're back in the main chat with Jakal and All Ranks talking shit about Vision, obviously. We move on to the next immunity challenge called Number Collector, where tribe members will race out one at a time to collect a paper slip with a number and item on it. After getting the item, they need to put it on a massive 5x5 board, making sure they match, with Jakal having a particularly difficult time with the challenge, with All Ranks being super upset about it. Vision also struggles in the challenge while Ben is confused about the challenge. Jakal jumps on the opportunity, telling Ben to just run into the ocean, to which Ben actually listens for some reason. But either way, really fun stuff. Vision then attempts a similar thing on Caleb, only for Caleb to not even remotely listen to it for a nanosecond. Piedra wins the challenge, and then uses their visitation ticket, with Nifty and Jakal using it, allowing them to hang out on the new Arcia tribe for a bit. Either way, we see Jakal literally burning down the Piedra tribe, which is incredible, obviously. Nifty gets a confessional where he talks about the Ejek again, saying that it's clear to him that Jakal is trying to be this OTTN villain figure for the season. Flipping to Jakal, who's running around his confessional, talking about killing all the chickens, dumping everything in the ocean, and burning down all their stuff, and says that Tribal is gonna be good. Vision, Echo, and Ben all talk, and Vision is saying that he wants to target Jerry, and that this group here can be the final 3 of the season, to which Ben agrees, leading to Echo asking if he and Ben can talk in private. We flip to that private conversation, to which Echo blatantly says that he does not think they should side with Vision and Jervy, that he thinks they should target Jervy and side over with Jerry on this one, letting Ben know that Jerry had told him everything that went down on the original Arcia tribe. And it's an interesting dynamic here, because clearly Echo is wanting to side with Jerry, while Ben seems to be more so on the Jervy and Vision side of things. We get Ben and Jerry's, I know, I'm hilarious, conversation where Jerry is basically giving his pitch to Ben, talking about how Vision is running around like a madman and that he wants Vision gone. Jervy gets a confessional next, talking about how Vision wants to target Jerry, just for Jervy to say in confessional, how about no? Because Jerry is from the original Arcia. Jervy does want to keep that old group together, but alas, he's just gonna go with it, because even though he can't stand Vision, he feels like he needs to stick with him in order to advance further in the game. Ben then goes to Jakal asking for some advice, to which Jakal tells him, just side with Jerry, do whatever Jerry wants to do, I don't know. Echo speaks in confessional about how great he feels. He was on the bottom of the Piedra tribe, and now he swapped into a spot where he should still be on the bottom with Ben, but him and Ben are actually in the power position yet again, able to side with whoever they want and dictate who goes home in this round. He also thinks that Ben might just screw this up for him, despite despite being the #1 ally. Either way, he does hope that Ben doesn't screw it up. With that, we then go to Tribal Council, where we see that the Tribal is literally burning down with the set being on fire, allowing for Chris to say that evidenced by the Tribal itself, the game is heating up. Anyways, he talks about how Nifty and Jakal will be sitting in on Tribal listening to everything that they say there. Jervy says that he's upset at the vegetation reward because they burned down all their stuff, destroyed their parkour course, and he's crying, he's upset, only for Chris to say in monotone, okay, whatever, which is such a fun moment to me. Echo talks about being fucked because of the 3-2 majority, where he calls Jarvy, which leads to a small argument between the two, where Echo apologized for mispronouncing his name, only to call him bitch boy Jervy. But still, yeah, saying either him or Ben are likely gonna go home this round. Ben agrees, laughing to himself along the way. He says it's hard to convince people to flip, but he doesn't want to campaign against Echo. Chris asks Jerry if it's scary seeing these two people not want to campaign against one another despite being on the bottom, and Jerry retorts that it is scary, that their bond must be a bit tight from the old Piedra tribe, and says that the bond will only get more scary as the game goes on and the numbers dwindle. Jakal says he didn't have a fun time here, but Nifty says that they got everything they wanted. Chris asks Jakal and Nifty if they want to shake the game up by revealing targets, only for Nifty to stand and say that the targets of this round are Jervy and Jerry, leading to a confused reaction from Jervy, but obviously Jerry already knew this. Either way, Chris then reveals another twist, that Jakal and Nifty will be voting in this tribal, even though they cannot be voted for. As the two get up to cast their votes, Jakal tells Nifty that they should talk things through because he's pretty sure that their votes will decide this round, where he's actually right, but we'll talk about that in a minute. We're now in private. Jakal says that he thinks the votes are 3 votes Vision, 2 votes Jerry, so he wants him and Nifty to vote for Jervy in the case of an idol. Then Nifty asks him straight up if he trusts Jerry, because that's really what they're deciding here, is whether or not to flip on Jerry. Chris reads the votes out, leading to Jerry receiving 2 votes from Jervy and Vision, whilst Jervy receives the votes of everyone else, being voted out in a 5-2 vote, becoming the first member of the jury, with Jervy saying that none of them will win. And with that, we do lose Jervy, who I really feel like we didn't get to see as much as others on this season, where he's pretty much relegated to just being Vision's ally and not much else, where he does have some fun confessionals, albeit a bit mean-spirited at times, but he doesn't really get that much airtime. Despite that, though, he does still at least have a fun exit from the game. As for the game he played, though, I mean, it's pretty bad on paper, where in his first tribal, it goes to a 3-3-1 vote, but it really was a 4-3, as we see in the revote, which Jakal always siding against Jervy's side. He then doesn't go to another tribal pre-swap, but would have been in some danger if he had, where him and Vision were definitively on the bottom of the original Arcia tribe. Granted, I think he probably survives, where had Arcia lost again, I think the majority likely splits the vote, resulting in a 2-2 vote, and if Vision doesn't play an idol in that spot, they probably take Vision out. Either way, it doesn't matter because he was still on the bottom either way, so he would have just been taken out of the final 5 of that tribe. But then he gets a swap where the old Arcia has the majority with himself and Vision and Jerry. The problem is that this is genuinely a really bad swap for him. He's working in lockstep with Vision, but with Jerry on the tribe as well, it makes things very difficult since Jerry obviously has that vendetta against them. It doesn't help that whilst Jervy wants to stay Arcia strong, both Jerry and Vision want the other gone. So he has to pick a side, and obviously he sides with Vision. To be clear, in that spot, I do think he makes the right call, where obviously Vision is more likely to work with him than Jerry is, but still. As for his vote off, it was a 5-2 with Jakal and Nifty voting, but I don't see him as being screwed over here, where even had that not happened, the vote would have fallen as a 3-2 anyways. All that being said, I think Jervy is interesting because whilst I think he is a solid player and has a good head on his shoulders for the game, he also does play a pretty bad game on this season. So what I was talking about earlier, though, with Jakal and Nifty's votes really deciding this tribal, it's because of the way that the tribe divided here, where the tribe divided with Jervy and Vision on one side and Echo, Ben, and Jerry on the other side. Had Jakal and Nifty decided to side with Jervy and Vision, then they could have gotten by with a 4-3 vote against Jerry. It could have happened. Obviously, it doesn't, and it wasn't going to happen, especially with us finding out significantly later that Jakal and Jerry were actually really close in the very early parts of the season. But either way, like I said, I don't really view Jervy as getting screwed over. Yeah, the twist does kind of just, it makes it a 5-2 instead of a 3-2. But at the same time, Jervy then would have also had that opportunity. Had his relationship with Jakal been better, Jakal could have fought for him rather than fighting for Jerry. We continue our voyage through the season with episode 5, Ounce of Paranoia, opening on the Piedra tribe with Chris in confessional about Jakal pissing him off during the challenge, and he wants to flip alongside Caleb and Nifty at this point just so he doesn't have to deal with Jakal and his antics. We see Caleb, All Ranks, and Chris talk as well, with All Ranks saying that he'd be surprised if Jerry gets out of that spot, 100% expecting for the likes of both Vision and Jervy to flip on Jerry, where he tells Caleb about Vision and Jervy having targeted Jerry in the past. So even though Caleb brings up that there's only 2 old Piedras, All Ranks, despite that, still believes that it will be Jerry going. We see him talk in confessional afterwards, where All Ranks tells us that he's worried about Jerry, basically just hoping for Jerry to pull out some sort of move here. But as long as he himself is safe, that's all that really matters at the end of the day, showing him as a very self-interested player. We flip back to the prior conversation where Caleb warns Chris and All Ranks about Ben, telling them that he wouldn't advise trusting Ben, even though he likes the guy and he's still sketched out by him. But also, Ben has kept his word to Caleb both times he's given it, where for once it feels like the person talking about Ben is the one that's paranoid. Caleb talks to us in confessional, saying he's surprised to still be in the game, where the host Chris keeps playing antics on him, interrupting his confessional, which is just incredible, obviously. But either way, he talks about feeling good with All Ranks and Chris, and that if they do go to a tribal council, he expects that Nifty would be the one to get the boot, in a position where Caleb doesn't actively want Nifty to go, but it's a sacrifice he's willing to make so long as it keeps himself in the game. Assuming that if he does get to the merge, he thinks the target on his back will start to diminish a good bit. We move over to the Arcia tribe afterwards with a Jerry confessional ranting about Vision, obviously, where he articulates the fact that the vote was out of his hands. He wanted Vision to go, but he knew that he had to go along with Ben and Echo for the vote who preferred to see Jervy go. After that one confessional on the swapped Arcia tribe, we then see the tribes merge, where last season a merged tribe was called Air. Easy enough. This season it's called Espoyis, which I will hopefully not need to say over and over throughout the rest of this review, because Espoyis is a mouthful. And it is upon writing this script right now that I realize I'm almost at the full length of the Sherwood script, and I'm just now getting to the merge. Yay. Where I did say at one point in the Sherwood review, I don't remember exactly where, for a little bit of background information if you needed to know, the current raw recording of this is at the 1 hour, 24 minutes, and 49 seconds mark, if you needed to know. Either way, we immediately open with another confessional from Jerry, talking about not expecting the merge to have come this late, but he says that he needs to really make sure he's talking to the right people at the right time. He hopes that Vision doesn't get tunnel visioned on targeting him in the meantime. Speaking of tunnel vision targeting, we see Nifty talking to Jerry, where he explains that Ben is the second in command to Echo and tells Jerry about his suspicions about Walker voting himself in the tribal that he went home. He expresses that even though he failed to take out Echo, he's still gung-ho about getting the bartending turtle out of the game, to which Jerry readily agrees after hearing Nifty and Caleb are tight in the game. We see a conversation afterwards between Echo and Ben with Chris and All Ranks, in which Echo talks about how people are likely to be voting him at the next tribal, with Chris having told him that Nifty is up to no good spreading his name around, and Echo says that he's trying to build a strong 5 to counter that plan. Ben is in confessional afterwards being thrilled about making the merge, where he believes himself to be in a good position at this point in the game, where he and Echo are still an obvious duo, but they also both just saved Jerry, so that's 3 that they should have on their side. And with the talk seemingly going well, at least from his perspective, he should have both Chris and All Ranks on his side as well. We're back on the Nifty side of things, where he's talking to Jakal, with Jakal saying that all they need is 5, and they can come up with 5. Jakal knows Vision would be on board. He thinks he can get Jerry on board easily, with Nifty saying he's got Caleb on lock and knows he can get him into a 5, and that's all that they need. Our setup seemingly being this. On the Echo side of things, we have him leading one side with Ben, All Ranks, and Chris, and Jakal is leading the opposing side with Nifty, Caleb, and Vision. Jerry is completely in the middle, with both sides vying for his vote, putting him in a prime position at this point in the game to do whatever he wants. Either way, Jakal gets a confessional, being absolutely flabbergasted that Vision could genuinely be a number for him, and he finds it ridiculous because he knows Vision is annoying and he wanted to get rid of him earlier in the game. Then Chris's first time getting 2 confessionals in the same episode, talking about how all of the idols that have been in the water so far, so he immediately swims out to an ocean monument. If you've played Minecraft, you know what it is. If you haven't, it's basically a sea temple. It's not important for this. We see Jakal already at the temple, and we see Vision, Caleb, Chris, and All Ranks all in a call, with Vision shockingly saying that they should all be looking for the idol, with afterwards getting this funny moment to me where he says, "Everyone here, final..." Wait, how many people are here? Oh yeah, final 4 guys. guys, I promise. Which I will say, I get the fact that people find Vision annoying, but I'm gonna keep it real. I find him so entertaining, especially after subsequent rewatches. Either way, All Ranks talks about having seen Jakal at the temple. Naturally, that then leads to All Ranks getting in confessional being so excited because he found the idol. Despite Jakal having already been there, it's All Ranks that finds it, and he chooses to keep that a secret from everybody else for the time being. The first individual immunity challenge of the season is called Totem Climb. Super simple challenge here with players needing to break a torch in front of a large pillar with a bunch of ladder jumps circling around the totem, with the first 3 to place their torch at the top of the totem, moving on to the final round, with Caleb and All Ranks getting it done pretty quickly and Echo being the third one up a bit behind them. When all is said and done and the final round ends, it is Caleb who comes home with the immunity necklace. Following the challenge, we get an Echo confessional, some of his finest work really, talking about needing to get the numbers on his side because of Nifty's one-sided rivalry with him, where clearly Nifty is just targeting him because Nifty has a crush on him and that Nifty's just upset that Echo likes Ben more than him. He's confident with Chris and All Ranks, obviously Ben as well. He also wants to target Nifty as a defense plan, which is definitely the right call for him at this point, in the same way that in an ideal world for Jerry, Vision should be the one to go, where shockingly in a game like this, having people in the game who are actively targeting you is not the preferred strategy. Either way, we see Jerry and Caleb talk, where Jerry really just wants to touch base and check with Caleb to see if he's close to Nifty, like Nifty said. We see Echo and Caleb talk, where Echo brings up his main 4 and wants Caleb to join in on that plan to boot Nifty, to which Caleb says it's a strong group as long as that group can stay together, but he would also personally rather see Jakal go, with him saying that Nifty is someone they can just get rid of later, with Jakal being someone capable of gaining numbers more easily in the short term, worrying him specifically. Chris then gets added to the two of them's conversation, where Chris also agrees with Caleb that it should be Jakal to go, but the 3 of them are worried that Jakal may have the idol because Chris saw him in the ocean monument earlier. Chris then talks to Jerry, informing him of the Jakal plan, with Jerry and Jakal talking right afterwards, with Jerry letting Jakal know that Chris was throwing his name out alongside Echo's name being out there in the ethosphere at this point, with Jakal saying that the vote should be Echo this round because he doesn't want to see Nifty and Vision just be unnecessarily on the bottom and do nothing about it. Jakal then talks to Chris with a very short conversation, with the two of them touching base. Nothing really much of substance was said here. Caleb is then in confessional saying that everyone is playing stupid, but that the majority seems to be himself, Chris, All Ranks, Ben, and Echo. But he's very glad to have won immunity because being safe this round allows him to play at his full potential. Jakal seems to be the boot at this point in time, but there's talks of splitting a vote on Nifty in case of an idol. Echo and Jakal then talk, with it being awkward because both of them know that the other has said their name, and they both know they might be the boot. But Echo still tells Jakal that the vote is Nifty, and Jakal breaks the ice, saying that he knows Chris was throwing around his name. So long as it isn't himself going, he doesn't care what happens. He has this great closing line as well, saying, "Why don't the threats just team up?" Nifty is then in confessional, expressing that he's being targeted, but he still wants to target Echo, seemingly believing that Echo is running the entire game, hoping that if Echo goes home, it turns the game on its head entirely and breaks the game wide open. Jakal then tells Nifty that he'd been ratted out by somebody. Nifty says that All Ranks has been very iffy, but Jakal says that they have an opportunity here to mend fences a bit. But all of this leads into another All Ranks confessional, saying that he's super bummed about losing the immunity challenge, but he does feel relatively safe, even though he knows that he very well could be wrong. Echo and Ben talk, where Echo lets Ben know that he was approached by Jakal to have the grouping of Echo, Ben, Nifty, and Vision all work together with Jakal to boot All Ranks this round, thinking that All Ranks is a threat and that he may have found the merge idol. Ben asks Echo what he's really thinking, with at this point it feeling like Echo and Ben are now in the swing vote position again, with Ben saying that the two of them are just always in the middle. Jakal then gets a confessional telling us what Echo just told us, with Jakal trying to create a plan here to blindside All Ranks, which could really shake up the game in its entirety, but he's worried that he'll go home if he cannot convince Nifty on board, with Nifty still obviously preferring to target Echo, not wanting to take anybody else as an answer. But in this position, Jakal needs Nifty. If Nifty is not on board, then Jakal likely goes home. Nifty and Jakal then talk as our final conversation, where Nifty tells him not to worry too much, they've got this in the bag. That leads us into Tribal Council, with it being pretty crazy at this point, with Echo, Jakal, Nifty, and All Ranks all being set up as potential boots here, where Chris opens the Tribal, welcoming the final 9 and asking Caleb how the safety feels, to which Caleb says it feels great to take his mind off of the constant worry of going home, saying there's a lot of unpredictable players on this season, which has caused him many worries. He then turns to All Ranks, asking about his lack of tribal experience, given that he's only been to one prior to this, to which All Ranks rebuts that it only shows that that the other tribes lost more challenges, and that's it. Jakal then talks about how important the pre-merge alliances are, and they do matter, but every vote is a new slate. That many names were thrown out. Nifty believes much the same, that there will be multiple shots thrown out tonight, despite only one of them falling dead, to which he further says that he believes a shot will be taken at him tonight, but doesn't feel like he'll be the one whose torch gets snuffed tonight. All Ranks then reiterates that you should never feel safe without the immunity necklace that Caleb is wearing. Chris says that he was snooping around the Ocean Monument, believing that there was an idol, which seems to be an open secret amongst the Espo Yeast merged tribe, where everyone just kind of assumes that somebody must have found it. We close this all out with Nifty standing in front of everyone, saying that he is going to be voting for Echo, and that everyone else can vote for Echo too if they just believe in themselves. To which Echo then takes the stand, saying pretty plainly that the 5 he settled down with is the 5 he plans to stay with up to the final 5. Where obviously this is just horrible game from Nifty. Jakal is first to vote, where he says that what Nifty just did is one of the stupidest things he's ever seen, and that Nifty completely screwed the both of them tonight. To which Nifty gets a voting confessional saying, "Screw you, Echo, and even if nobody else is voting him, even if he himself goes home because of this, at least he can say he left the game with his independence," which I guess, dude. The votes come out with All Ranks getting 1 vote, with it coming down to either Jakal or Echo, to which Jakal goes home in a 5-3-1 vote and becomes the second member of the jury. And with that, obviously, we lose Jakal. Let's talk about his game first. He starts off in the majority on Arcia, where the original Arcia broke down with himself, Chris, All Ranks, and Jerry on one side, where it's kind of 2 duos there, with Chris and All Ranks on one duo, and Jerry and Jakal on the other duo, with Thomas, Jervy, and Vision on the other side of the tribe. In the first tribal, Jakal goads Vision into playing his idol, telling him that somebody was trying to vote him out that night, to which he sticks to his word, putting a vote on Vision, causing the 3-3-1 vote, to which Jakal easily sides with Jerry voting out Thomas. He then proceeds to complain about winning every tribal immunity, which really starts to annoy some of his tribe mates, particularly Chris. Either way, he proceeds to go on the visitation reward, destroys the swapped Arcia tribe camp, and chooses to side with Ben, Echo, and Jerry to boot Jervy. Where this is interesting because this round really is Jakal's decision. Nifty puts the ball entirely in his court, where if Jakal wanted to boot Jerry, then Nifty would have flipped with him to boot Jerry in a 4-3 vote. But nonetheless, Jakal does decide to put the votes on Jervy, which I think is the right call anyways. Comes into the merge, where the merge is just chaotic, but really the damage he did was already done at this point, where Chris was already annoyed at him. Caleb also saw him as a threat who could rally numbers, to which Caleb had an accurate read, where once everything blows up, Jakal goes immediately into game mode, coming up with a pretty solid plan in my opinion, trying to get the likes of Nifty to not target Echo for the round and to loop Ben and Vision in to all band together for the round and snipe All Ranks out of the game, which genuinely I think would have been a great move had he been able to pull it off. But he's also completely screwed once Nifty stands up and declares that he's voting Echo and wants to try to do so as well, ironically his fear coming to life here. Where earlier he said in confessional that if he can't get Nifty to not target Echo for the round, then he will likely go home as a result, which we see happen here. To be fair, I'm not sure his plan would have worked out either way, with Echo and Ben still falling in the middle here, but I digress. On the other hand, Jakal is genuinely phenomenal TV. I personally love Jakal as a character. I found him to be very entertaining throughout his run on the season. Did it come across as mean-spirited at points? Obviously, but that doesn't make it not entertaining, where we saw Kyle play up this more villainous role on the previous season, but Jakal really embodies that more villainous philosophy, turning it up to 100, damn near 100% of the time. Tragically though, despite Jakal's run ending, the show must go on, where we open episode 6, Vengeance, a double episode that I cannot wait to script and record and then edit. How fun. With a Jerry confessional, where he's still at the tribal council set, but he does the confessional, funnily enough, with Echo still sitting in the background, where Jerry talks about not being sure who voted for All Ranks, but he does think it was probably Vision, although I can tell you that he's wrong, since Jakal was the one who voted All Ranks. Either way, he also says that he's the other Echo vote, where obviously in his head it was Nifty and Jakal voting Echo, where really it was Nifty and Vision, but either way. We flip to Nifty's confessional, where he opens with an absolute banger, stating, "Screw Echo up his bum, screw the people who are up his bum, Echo is controlling things." Really just a confessional of him ranting about how the others really like Echo and how he failed at persuading them to take him out in the previous round, with him wrapping up this confessional declaring that he's gonna take Echo down, as well as everyone in the game who supports Echo, just for him to say he doesn't know who his supporters are, but whatever. All Ranks is up next, where he says that during the tribal he actually extended extended an olive branch to Nifty, letting Nifty know that the Echo plan didn't really have the numbers behind it and that Jakal would be the one going, really banking on the fact that Nifty wouldn't be upset about this information, hoping to use Nifty as a number in this upcoming round to pull off some moves. He then talks about being in a pretty good spot currently and hopes to get to the final 5 with the idol in his pocket to guarantee his spot in the final 4, and his plan to get there is to win immunities, obviously. I will go ahead and say now, since I don't believe it's ever been relevant up to this point, but the reason he specifically says he wants to get to the final 5 with his idol is that the final 5 is actually the last point at which an idol can be played in the game. An idol at 4 is worthless, it doesn't do anything. So if All Ranks does what he says and holds on to the idol all the way to the final 5 round, he doesn't need to worry, he's completely safe for the round, essentially bypassing it courtesy of him having held on to the idol up to that point. Either way, then we move on to King of the Hill, the next reward challenge, a very simple one where the players need to be the first 4 up a hill, being allowed to do whatever to ensure that they get up there first, with the 4 winners of the challenge gaining a ticket to reward Isle, which we'll talk about shortly. The winners of the challenge are All Ranks, Chris, Jerry, and Vision, ironically being the remaining OG Arcia tribe members, sending the OG Pietra tribe members back to camp empty-handed. The winners of the challenge arrive on reward Isle, where the host Chris plants a chest down with stuff in it, only for there to be trouble in paradise because someone has stolen the clue to a hidden immunity idol, with Jerry immediately pointing his finger at Vision, to which All Ranks agrees. Vision then says, haha, I'm just kidding guys, and then rather than divvying out the books, he says, hold on, I'm gonna read it, with the others blocking the door to stop him from leaving, only for him to laugh about it, breaking the door down, with Jerry putting his foot down and saying that if Vision doesn't quit it, he's gonna call him out in front of everybody in the tribe chat. This approach ends up working, and Vision shortly afterwards decides to give the others the clue books, before telling the others that the people back at camp must be plotting against them, and that what they really need right now is a final 4 deal. Cause it's Vision, come on. Vision then gets a confessional talking about having grabbed all the clues, and talks about being called out, and saying that he honestly can't work with these 3, since clearly based on the fact that they called him out for this shit, they clearly don't want to work with him. Where we do shortly afterwards get Jerry talking to Vision about having found the start of the game, where the tribes were marooned, and that's cool, only for Chris and All Ranks to be running around the aisle themselves, leading to an All Ranks confessional, where he basically just says that these clues are useless, cause they're the clues to the idol that he already found, making it also pretty unfortunate that he was one of the people that came to this reward in the first place, because this entire reward was pretty much pointless. Regardless, we flip back to the Espoyes camp, where everybody who lost the challenge is talking together, to which Caleb brings up what I mentioned earlier about the original tribes being separated, to which Ben asks if the others think that the old Arcia tribe is plotting, to which Nifty says, yeah, probably, everybody is plotting, to which Ben then says, well, I don't know, like, should we do something or something? To which Nifty then in turn plays scared as well, giving him a non-answer, saying like, well, I don't know, man, like, maybe if you want to do something, only for Echo to chime in, saying that he's willing to do something so long as Nifty doesn't write down his name for once, to which Nifty chuckles, before leading to Nifty saying that he's open ears, and he bizarrely relates this to US politics, which, shockingly, in my Minecraft Survivor Roraima YouTube video, I'm gonna choose to not get into, but he talks about the concept of reaching across the aisle, where in essence, folk on different teams team up for one common goal, with Ben then telling him directly that he and Echo need to think everything over, given what just went down at the tribal the previous night. Caleb is in confessional following this, saying that at this point it feels like everyone on Espoyes is slowly closing in on Echo. He also states that this is actually what he wants as well, and knows for a fact that he can get Nifty on board because, come on, obviously Nifty's gonna be on board to get out Echo. Caleb then talks to Nifty about this exact situation, where Caleb is then told by Nifty that he's gonna need to play double agent. Essentially, Nifty wants Caleb to be in communication with both Echo and himself to convince Echo that Caleb is the middleman between the two. The old Arcia is back from reward, and Caleb talks to All Ranks, still campaigning to get Echo this coming round, with All Ranks asking about what went down with the old Piedro when Arcia was on reward, to which Caleb just says it was a mostly awkward conversation betwixt Nifty and Echo given the previous war. He also tells All Ranks that Nifty is still down to vote Echo, that Nifty and Echo hadn't really made up, because obviously, come on. He then asks All Ranks if he thinks Chris would be down, to which All Ranks stammers a little bit before saying that Chris actually wants Vision to go, with the two then discussing how Vision is just so not a threat at this point in the game. Even with him being shady at the reward, Caleb talks about how Vision can't win the game, there's no reason to vote him out. He also says that since All Ranks is close to Chris, he should be the one to loop him in, and All Ranks agrees, saying he wants Echo out too, and says that Jerry should be the 5th vote because he just doesn't trust Vision. Chris is then in confessional talking about the whole Vision situation and how he doesn't trust Vision, and hasn't since day one, but when they got back to camp, he and Vision swam out to the ocean monument where Vision opened a chest, and Chris opened the chest right afterwards, and seeing Vision do that has now convinced Chris that Vision must have the idol that All Ranks already found at this point. But either way, Chris then dunks on Vision a bit, saying that Vision is trying to play this more outwardly strategic game, but he's not very good at it and failing for the most part, with it very much so coming across that Chris is locking his sights in Vision at this point. We move into the Final 8 immunity challenge called Stilt Jumps, but I'm not going to get into that yet, because as soon as everyone is together on the orange mat, Chris tells the entire tribe that Vision has the idol, to which Vision gets immediately defensive, utilizing the whole no you strategy, which is obviously incredibly effective, where the host Chris then says that whilst that's all interesting, guys, we got a challenge to get to, come on. A simple challenge where they need to run and jump on 4 poles in a square, clockwise, being unable to stop. If the competitors fall or stop by Chris's discretion, they are eliminated, with the last contestant running and jumping winning immunity. It's a challenge that goes by super quickly, with Caleb falling first, Jerry right behind him, Ben stopping causing his elimination with Nifty falling moments later, Echo falls right afterwards, with the other 3 having a little bit left in the tank, only for Vision and Chris to fall around the same time, allowing for All Ranks to secure his spot in the final 7, and mind you, this challenge lasted less than 20 seconds. Ben gets the confessional closing out the challenge, saying that Nifty wants to play like Jonathan Penner and join their side, which is funny to me because out of every Survivor player to exist, the first one to get name dropped is Penner. Nothing against Penner, by the way, I like him a lot too, but really, that's the first real Survivor name drop in MC Survivor? Jonathan Penner? If you must know, Jonathan Penner played on seasons 13, 16, and 25, Cook Islands, Micronesia, and Philippines of the real US Survivor show. Not gonna spoil how any of those go here, but really? Either way, Ben says this development should be fun. We're then back at camp with Chris and Vision still feuding, obviously, with Chris continuing to call out Vision and airing out his own pent-up feelings, telling everyone the same thing he said in confessional earlier, that he hasn't trusted Vision since the start of the game, to which Vision says he's a sneak. Following this is a bit of a scramble, with Vision talking to Echo about, oh, we need to get Chris out, where Echo asks him if he does agree to vote Chris, will Vision be loyal to him, to which Vision says he has nobody in the game, and if Echo keeps him around, he'll be sure to be loyal, to which Vision then gives him the clue and some diamonds, which is just ridiculous, even getting Echo to laugh at the situation. Chris and Caleb are then talking, where Caleb is continuing the Echo campaign, saying that if Echo gets to the end, he wins the game, with Chris's main defense being that if they do boot Echo, they lose their majority, because not only is Echo out, obviously, but that would also take Ben off of their side, causing Ben to flip, to which Caleb says, well, we can't just get Vision out, to which Caleb says, well, we can just get Vision and Jerry, only for Chris to obviously say, no, we're not doing Vision. Echo and Ben talk, with Ben thinking that Chris has the idol, with Ben having this pretty clever plan here of trying to get Echo to fight with Nifty at Tribal to create a smokescreen where Nifty would actually know about this fight ahead of time and then be on board to blindside Chris at this Tribal, to which Echo is super down, with Jerry also possibly being on board here. Echo is then in confessional, with Ben running around in the background, causing Echo to break his confessional up, saying, what the fuck are you doing? Get the fuck out of my confessional. But he talks about how he hopes he's not the one on the other side of a blindside tonight, but wants to target Chris because of this presumed idol, along with Chris in general just being a social threat in his eyes. Nifty and Chris talk, where Nifty is confirming the information that Chris gave the tribe about how Vision thinks he has the idol, and then rats out that Vision is trying to get Echo on board to boot Chris, and that they likely have Ben too, since Ben will do whatever Echo says. Shockingly, Nifty is throwing Echo under the bus here, I can't believe it. Chris and Jerry talk afterwards, where Chris doubles down that unless somebody already had the idol previously, then Vision is definitely lying, and he does have it. Jerry says that All Ranks and Caleb want to vote for Echo. Chris is then in confessional, saying he should just go with the rest of his alliance, even if he doesn't personally want to do it. Jerry is in confessional afterwards, saying that he was on the bottom during the pre-merge, but is now in a spot where he could possibly force rocks. People are coming to him for his vote, with people wanting either Nifty or Echo out, which notably is wrong information, with Jerry seemingly not being looped in on the Chris boot, but either way, Jerry talks about now being in a good position despite his rocky pre-merge, where he's in a spot where he can move forward, taking out the threats he thinks he needs to take out, and that he needs to figure out when he's going to do that. Chris, the host, opens the tribal council, asking Chris, the player, about whether or not it's simple to see who hates who or who's targeting who, only for Chris to say, absolutely not. He thought everyone was cool with him except for Vision, but then also says that he knows other people on the tribe has also had his name in their mouth. The host then turns to Vision, where he talks about how Chris called him out in the challenge about the idol, to which Vision snarkily remarks that Chris is a liar, number, only for the host to ask him if he thinks that will have a negative impact on his game, to which Vision explains his side of the story. So either Chris has the idol or someone else is lying to the rest of the tribe. The host asks all ranks about how it is from an outsider's perspective to see Chris and Vision clash like this, only for all ranks to retort that it's difficult because both of them went to where the idol was, so the tribe mates now individually need to choose who and what to believe. He talks about every choice in the game being a butterfly effect and that it decides your fate and the fate of others. Echo is asked about whether or not he thinks he'll be with the right people tonight, only for Echo to say that he doesn't think so because he doesn't have numbers courtesy of Nifty's constant targeting of him. Jerry is then next to bat, being told there's also tension between Echo and Nifty, saying that everyone is paranoid and trying to get the numbers and that the game has been shifting a lot this season. Vision says he has some final words to say, where he says that if he's voted out tonight, he will reveal whether or not he had the idol all along and that Chris is lying and that everyone should vote Chris. Obviously just something similar to what Nifty did last round, with the host asking Chris if he wants to respond, only for Chris to amusingly say that he doesn't need to. We flip through a few voting confessionals, with none of them being super noteworthy for me, but the votes do come out, with Echo and Ben voting for Chris, Vision voting for Nifty, and everyone else on the tribe blindsiding Echo, sending him home in a 5-2 to 1 vote. And with that, we do lose Echo, who, just like Jakal, I absolutely love on this season, being another one of my favorite characters across the season, but in a much different way. Where straight up, I did find Jakal more entertaining, first of all, but second of all, Echo was also just generally a lot more likable, really coming across as the hero to Jakal's villain. I found his dynamic with Ben to be pretty endearing throughout the season, and his constant deflecting of Nifty's one-sided rivalry with him was really fun to me. Either way, as a player, I do think Echo played a good game, but he also just naturally became a really big threat pretty early on, where obviously he's originally on Piedra, really being in control of that tribe when Alex leaves, allowing for the tribe to divide into two, with himself, Nifty, and Caleb on one side, and Ben, Shay, and Walker on the other, only for Ben to flip with the help of Nifty. But after the first vote, Nifty then flips on Echo because, well, we don't really know. I mean, like, he says that it's conjecture of like, oh, he's going to be a merge threat, but like, it's not really based on anything. Come on. Either way, despite Echo's best efforts, Walker would rather go home than make a choice, so he reluctantly goes along with Ben to vote Walker out, still receiving the votes of Nifty and Caleb, only to get swapped with Ben, Jerry, Vision, and Jervy, in a position where theoretically he's on the bottom, only to play the swap very well in my opinion, where I think for sure that he's the one who does the most work of getting Jerry on board, and not only that, he also avoids Vision and Jervy putting their votes onto him, where Echo very easily could have been screwed this round with the votes of Jerry, Jervy, Vision, Nifty, and Jakal, the latter two voting as a part of the visitation reward, but gets out of a 3-2 minority position without receiving a single vote. Then at the merge, he's obviously targeted by Nifty, because obviously, and he forms a strong majority with himself and Ben, Chris in all ranks, and Caleb, allowing for him to skate by booting Jakal, which I don't think was the best move for him, but also he was being targeted, and also Nifty's whole speech kind of put everything into a bit of disarray. Comes into the following round with Nifty shockingly targeting him, and finally goes out with Caleb and all ranks flipping on him at this point and convincing Jerry and Chris to jump on board as well. All in all, Echo's game is one in which he's running the old Piedra with Nifty, gets flipped on by Nifty, with Nifty being unsuccessful at getting him out twice in a row, but third time is the charm. He did at least have a very loyal alliance mate in Ben, and also, I mean, I guess we can talk about the idol, which, I mean, it's a bad play, right, because it doesn't do anything, but I also do get his rationale because the idol is very public, and obviously if you tell somebody, everybody's gonna know about it. His idol is one that everybody already knows about, so he's just kind of trying to get that out of the way. But I do think that it is a pretty impressive game, all things considered, especially given how low of a placement he ends up getting on the season, where him and Ben both talk about throughout this point in the game that they are constantly swinging back and forth in the middle, and it's a decent game. Either way, this is a double episode, so we have another round of gameplay to get through before we move on to the next episode. We are sent back to the Espo Yeast tribe with an all ranks confessional, and he's feeling pretty good with having Nifty and Echo targeting each other, pinning Chris and Vision against one another, all of his own idol shenanigans as well. We then flip to Vision and Chris's conversation where Chris is radio silent with the Vision saying they need to squash the beef and they should do a final 2 or final 3. And there's other people they need out, and he feels like Nifty should go, or maybe Jakal, who he wonders if is still in the game, prompting a what from Chris. Which again, it's so funny. We are then in the final 7 immunity challenge called Counting Challenge, where each player has their own hut with signs asking them to count certain objects at different locations, with the Vision not knowing how to use the numbered banners, which, again, incredible. All Ranks rings in first, being wrong on one of his numbers. Chris is then wrong on 3 of his numbers. Nifty has 2 wrong. Jerry has 2 wrong. Caleb has 2 wrong. And then All Ranks locks in again, this time getting it all right, collecting his second individual immunity of the season. And we close out the challenge with a confessional from Caleb saying that everything went well with the Echo vote, saying he has to vote Ben tonight, but wants to take Vision to the end so that he can win the game easily. With everyone and their mom wanting to talk to All Ranks as soon as they get back, only for him to make his choice on who to talk to, where obviously he goes to Vision, and Vision throws out Caleb, Nifty, and Jerry, which is like half the tribe at this point. All Ranks gets in confessional talking about how if he gets through the next round, he's guaranteed Final Four. He talks about Jedi mind tricking everyone, where he's even saying stuff and making them think it was their idea, and calls Vision a sucker for believing anything people tell him, and talks about how he thinks Nifty should go, and that as long as his alliance of 3 being Chris and Caleb make it, he'll be fine. We see Ben, Nifty, and Jerry talking, with Ben being paranoid after hearing his name, but Jerry thinks that if they band together, they can flip the game. We get a Nifty confessional laughing for 8 seconds, yes I counted, about getting Echo L. He also talks about never going to the end with Caleb, so he needs to rally the numbers to take Caleb out. All Ranks and Caleb talk, with All Ranks bringing up wanting to target Nifty. Chris, Jerry, and Vision talk about wanting to boot Nifty, but Jerry says that he doesn't want to play a scared game where he's constantly under the wings of All Ranks and Caleb. Where Chris leaves to go talk to Caleb, leaving Jerry and Vision alone, where Jerry says it's time to make a move and take out Caleb. Caleb and Chris talk about booting Nifty, touching base super quick. Chris is then in confessional saying that Ben was supposed to be the easy vote, but the scrambling has thrown out both Caleb and Nifty's names. Chris opens the second tribal of the episode, asking Caleb about the continuous splitting factions of the season, saying it's not just 2 sides battling it out. Nifty says that to play a game with so many sides, you need to figure out which sides have their back exposed. All Ranks says that he's happy to have won the immunity, but his threat is building as a result. Vision says that he's never been on the right side of the vote, despite then saying that he has always been the swing vote. Chris says that talking to everyone is a double-edged sword, since it makes you come across as being more likable, but that's a reason to be targeted in this game. Jerry thinks that being likable is a very wonderful quality to have in life, but in this game, it's a bit different. In this game where perception matters more. He doesn't know what the other's perception of him are either. Ben agrees with Jerry that their own perception doesn't really matter, and that what matters more in this game are the perceptions of others. Jerry then closes out the tribal telling everyone to stand and then sit on it. Why? Couldn't tell ya. Either way, we do see Caleb and Nifty's voting confessionals, with both clearly reluctantly voting the other, bringing an end to their duo throughout the season, where Chris asks anybody if they want to play an idol, only for Vision to stand up, and Chris say, no fakes, only for Vision to sit right back down. Leading up to a 5-2 Nifty vote with himself and Ben voting for Caleb. Chris says that Nifty was the first furry to play Minecraft Survivor, but unfortunately, this tribe is firstest. And with that, we do lose Nifty, whose game I probably went down on after the rewatch, where he is in control during the Shay boot and at no other point in the entire game, where after running that vote alongside Echo and Caleb, he then flips on Echo inexplicably and has this vendetta against him, targeting him at both the Walker and Jakal votes before finally getting Echo out at 8, and that's in a position where he's a tag-along. He's not the one driving the vote, it's Caleb driving the vote. Somehow, when Echo finally does get the boot, it's not because Nifty's handiwork finally paid off, rather it's because Caleb chooses to take advantage of Nifty's tunnel vision to get other people on board as well, with the comfort knowing that Nifty will always boot Echo. With Echo finally out of the game, Nifty in all of his wisdom decides that now it's time to turn on his number 1 ally Caleb, causing Caleb to then rally up the numbers against Nifty, to which he succeeds. Good on Nifty for at least having Ben on his side, I guess, but like, it's Ben. As a character though, I actually grew on Nifty a bit on this rewatch. I like Echo a lot, and I wasn't looking forward to seeing Nifty's storyline again, but it did have some funny moments, intentional or otherwise. I also just really liked that we had this Nifty vs. Echo storyline finally culminate in an episode where Nifty finally takes out Echo, only for him to be booted by his number 1 alliance. You can't write it better than that, folks. But with that, we move on to the final 6, episode 7, I'm Playing Jedi Mind Tricks, an episode that has one of the most iconic confessionals in all of Minecraft Survivor, which we'll get into whenever we get into it. And also, this is probably my favorite episode of the whole season, personally. Either way, we start off the episode with All Ranks and Ben talking, where All Ranks is telling Ben that he's worried since now he's won 2 immunities, he thinks he may be looked at as a big threat, to which Ben plays ball with him, telling him that he's right to think that way, but Ben doesn't want All Ranks out. He'd rather target the likes of Caleb, who he believes to be a big social threat at this point in the game. All Ranks is then in confessional, being proud of himself. Every vote off is one that he's been a part of. He's been masterminding every vote so far, he has great relationships with the entire cast, and thinks the rest of the cast doesn't even see him as that good of a competitor despite the fact that he's won 2 comps, where he then goes on to say, "I'm kicking their asses right now," which is just great content. Caleb is next talking about the 2 votes he received at Tribal, where he tells us that he found out from Chris that Jerry was targeting him. So at this point, he knows that Nifty was one of them, seemingly leaning that Jerry was the other vote, but he isn't completely sure, although we, the audience, obviously know that it was Ben who did it. We flip over to Jerry's side of things, where he says that he couldn't bring himself to vote Caleb out. He wanted him out, but didn't think he had the numbers. He believes that All Ranks Chris and Caleb have been running the game, and also believes that if he loses this next immunity challenge, there's a good chance he's going home. He thinks that his best shot at this point is to talk to Caleb at the right time and say the right thing to pull him over to his side. Jerry and Caleb are talking next, where Caleb confronts Jerry about the information Chris brought to his attention, to which Jerry initially pushes back a little bit, but relents, saying that he did say his name because of what he just told us in confessional about thinking that Caleb, Chris, and All Ranks were running the game, where he says that he's not an idiot, he can see it, to which Caleb seems to not be entirely against the idea of taking out All Ranks, with it coming out that Caleb isn't attached at the hip to them and can cut himself free if he thinks that he should. Chris is the next one to get a confessional, saying that in his mind there's already a clear Final Four in place between himself, All Ranks, Caleb, and Vision, with him thinking that Jerry should go here at 6, Ben at 5, since Vision's just such a non-threat. We move on to the Final 6 immunity challenge, called Torch Buoy Race, being one of the more iconic challenges from the season, if not the most iconic challenge from the season in my eyes, where there are 3 rectangular docks off the coast with poles of varying heights with a torch on top, and a colored pillar at the end. Castaways will break a torch and bring it to the side of the pillar, placing it down before swimming underneath their dock to repeat this process. Players will compete 3 at a time, with the first player to complete the task moving on to the final round. The first round is Jerry, All Ranks, and Caleb, with Caleb being pretty out of it, but Jerry and All Ranks going back and forth, culminating in this insane close call with Jerry pulling out the win by mere seconds. Afterwards, Ben, Chris, and Vision compete, with Chris being in the lead for most of it and winning it at the end. And then finally, we have Jerry versus Chris in the final round, with Chris taking the early lead, but pretty quickly Jerry makes up some time and luckily maintains his lead all the way through, with him and All Ranks both talking shit, which was fun, but either way, Jerry then wins his first individual immunity challenge. Chris then opens up the post-challenge content with a confessional, clearly being bummed out that Jerry won immunity, and acquiesces in this spot, saying that because Jerry won that simply means that the target now shifts over to Ben, where Jerry and Chris are talking next, with Chris saying that the easy vote is Ben, and Jerry confirms that he's down to do it. Nice and easy stuff here. Jerry is next in confessional, saying that right after the challenge, Caleb came to him, so it's looking like All Ranks blindside might be on the horizon. He's okay going for this risky play, where he makes it pretty clear that the main concern surrounding All Ranks at this point in the game is that he's so good in challenges that if they leave him in the game too much longer, he may just run the table and save himself through immunity challenges for the remainder of the season. Which, for Jerry in particular, this is absolutely the correct move. All Ranks has proven himself to be a very worthy competitor, only losing 1 tribal immunity in the pre-merge and already winning 2 out of the 4 individual immunity challenges of the season. Granted, Jerry doesn't know that All Ranks has the idol in that spot, but that also does support Jerry making this right call. Either way, we then see All Ranks, Caleb, and Chris talking, with them all seemingly going along with the easy Ben plan, where Caleb is next in confessional about wanting to pull off this All Ranks blindside, the move he's been wanting to make for a while now, and not only has All Ranks lost immunity, but Jerry won it, and even better, Jerry also wants to target All Ranks, making this the perfect time for Caleb to strike. Caleb and Jerry are talking next, with Jerry asking Caleb if the All Ranks plan is still on, to which Caleb says yeah, they're good. They talk about needing to leave Chris in the dark, with Jerry thinking he can bring Ben and Vision into the plan, which Caleb agrees, but thinks that Jerry should be the one to bring them into the fold without him. All Ranks and Chris talk next, with All Ranks being paranoid, rightfully so, but Chris reassures him and tells him that it's them and Caleb to the end. Jerry then goes to Ben and Vision, asking what their plans are currently, with Ben saying that he thinks it was himself and Jerry on the chopping block and that he obviously doesn't want to go, to which Jerry is ecstatic, even exclaiming that if they want to vote All Ranks, then boom, let's get it done. To which Ben then says, well, actually, I was thinking we'd do Caleb, with this being a prime opportunity to snipe Caleb out of the game, where if Caleb really is on board with this All Ranks plan, with him voting All Ranks and Chris voting for Ben, if Ben, Jerry, and Vision do vote for Caleb, then Caleb does get sniped out in a 3-2-1 vote, with him saying that Caleb is a big social threat who hasn't really pissed off anybody. Vision says that he gets where he's coming from, but Jerry makes a good point too. Vision says that he understands where Ben's coming from, but Jerry makes a good point too. With All Ranks having lost immunity, this is a good time to take the shot at the best challenge competitor on the season, with this trio believing that both All Ranks and Caleb are willing to flip on one another, where Ben says that he would actually really like this final 3, to which Jerry Jerry agrees pretty readily. Caleb then pulls Jerry aside, asking if he himself is the one going home now, with Jerry quelling his worries, saying that he's not the one voting for him, but Caleb says that he heard Ben was saying his name, to which Jerry responds saying, yeah, he did, I don't know what Ben and Vision are doing, they're just jacking their dicks in the corner, to which we then flip focus on Ben and Vision, thankfully just talking, with both of them saying they're chill with one another and burying the hatchet, so to say. We see Chris, Caleb, Ben, and Vision talking, with Caleb confronting Ben about throwing his name out, to which Ben says it's kind of weird at the moment, and we end all of this with my favorite confessional of the season, the confessional I've been waiting for all season, possibly my favorite confessional in the entire series, with All Ranks on a mountain, with the others being in shot below him, saying, I quote, these assholes think they're running the game, but they're not. They don't see that I'm running it. I'm running the game, not them. I am. With him then going on to talk about how they would be idiots to not take him out of the game this round. Even if he sounds like an asshole, the others are so stupid, but he's not gonna complain about it. They're not even voting him out tonight. And the others must have forgotten that there's even an idol in play at all. Which, again, I love this confessional. Again, not only is this the best confessional in this season, arguably this is the best confessional across the entire series for me. Again, obviously I'm doing this rewatch, so maybe that'll change over time, but this is the most iconic one to me right now. Chris then opens Tribal, asking All Ranks how it feels to not be safe, with the last time him not having immunity being back at the final 9, where All Ranks says that he's heard his name but believes he doesn't have power and doesn't see the reason to boot him this round just because he won some challenges. Vision then says that All Ranks does have a reason to worry, just as everyone else does. All Ranks has won challenges, that's indisputable, and a byproduct of that is the target on his back has and will continue to grow. Jerry then talks about being a target in this game isn't just about winning challenges. Yes, there are physical threats, but there's also strategic threats and social threats, with all types of threats being important to consider. Chris says he hasn't heard his name, and Ben says that he feels on the outs with him not being very good socially and not being great at challenges. Caleb talks about the idea that at the final 6, the players have it in their mind that they need to make a big move to impress the jury, and in essence, bring it home and win the game. In this game, it's not enough to just get to the end. You need to get to the end and win the jury vote. Lastly, Vision says that he thought Chris had the idol, but doesn't think that anymore, instead thinking the idol hasn't been found at all, leading to All Ranks asking the host if he can stand up and say something, to which Chris obliges, with All Ranks standing in front of everybody saying that all he's been doing is doing what he's been told, being a sheep, being a follower, so they should think twice before voting him. He says that there are bigger threats, social threats, who are going to win a jury vote if they get to the end, with Ben agreeing with All Ranks, saying that even if All Ranks does win all the immunity challenges, that doesn't matter because he could still get to the end with no votes. Caleb then says that being loyal isn't a bad thing, but at this point in the game, it's about the jury and impressing that jury, where he believes that if you've been following orders the whole time, you won't win and should not win. Where during the voting process, with people going to cast their votes, All Ranks stands up and begins asking people whether or not he should play his idol, with everybody saying that he should play it and that they didn't vote for him. After the voting, All Ranks stands up and says, you know what, Chris, I'm making a move, before proceeding to sit down and not play his idol. First vote, Ben. Second vote, Chris. All Ranks. Chris. Ben. All Ranks. A 2-2-2 tie. All Ranks, Chris, and Ben will not vote. Jerry, Caleb, and Vision will now go re-vote. And now, in a vote of 3-0, All Ranks is voted out, slamming on his keyboard as he goes, saying that all the good players got out. And Chris, the host, then says, with that, All Ranks, you are the first person in Minecraft Survivor history to go home with an idol. And with that, we lose All Ranks. Again, incredible stuff. Let me just get this out of the way. I absolutely love this episode for him. I think that this episode absolutely capitalizes on All Ranks as a character. His downfall across the episode is absolutely fantastic. Chef's kiss, could not write it better myself. As a character, whilst All Ranks is mostly okay, this episode is just absolute cinema. Perfect character episode. But he's more than a character. He's a player, so let's get into that. On the original Arcia tribe, it was split, with himself ending up winning the day with the help of Jerry, Chris, and Jakal, being able to get Thomas out in the first round. Then at the swap, he swapped into a great position with himself, Chris, and Jakal staying together, being joined by Caleb and Nifty, where All Ranks then forms a really solid bond with Caleb, putting Nifty on the bottom of that tribe. Then we get to the merge, and he's really running the table, where he's involved in the plan to save Echo, with himself and Chris teaming up with Echo and Ben, while Luke looping in Caleb as a fifth, where they all decide to boot Jakal. I will say that was more so Chris's agenda, but either way, in the following round, All Ranks then flips to boot to Echo, flips again to boot Nifty, and is the final six, and is in the final six with an idol, which obviously he's gonna play, especially after hearing his name, but no. All Ranks' worst enemy is All Ranks. He is so overconfident throughout the season, and that particularly shines through in this episode, which, from an entertainment perspective, is incredible to watch. But from a game perspective, obviously, it's not good, and is really the root cause of his elimination here, where he simply trusted Caleb too much. Either way, up through this round, from the final 14 to the final 7, I think All Ranks plays a very, very solid game, with him running the early merge alongside Chris and Caleb. Either way, we are now in the final 5, with episode 8, Walking Out with Bronze. We open the episode with Chris and Caleb talking, with Chris saying he thought they had this, but the other 3 are already in a room. Caleb is in confessional next, talking about how he liked All Ranks a lot, but he knew he had to take him out. Jerry and Ben are now both saying that they want to go far with Caleb, but Caleb thinks it's horseshit. That immunity would be great right now, and he's not going to give up. He's going to make sure that Jerry keeps his word. Chris and Vision then talk, with Vision claiming that he voted All Ranks, but was worried about the idol, and Chris says he was voting Ben because he thought that was the plan, where Chris takes the All Ranks blindside pretty well, actually, even though he says that he was told by Caleb that Vision had actually voted for him, but he trusts Vision, I guess. Now, to pull away from their conversation, Vision is full of shit, where it was Jerry and Caleb who voted All Ranks, Ben and Vision voted Chris. Either way, Vision obviously votes correctly on the revote. We then see what is pretty much this underdog alliance of Ben, Vision, and Jerry talking, with Ben still thinking it should be Caleb next, but Jerry would rather wait to figure out who the target is until after the immunity challenge happens, with it very much feeling like it's this trio versus a Chris and Caleb duo at this point. We get their next reward challenge called Bow Pull Race, a simple concept where the players will pull a bow back without letting go, with everyone eventually dropping out, but Chris manages to finish the challenge, winning an advantage in the form of a 2-minute session of studying the final 5 immunity before the others get to see it. Back at the Espoyese tribe, we see Jerry and Caleb talking, with Caleb saying that it's really just him and Chris and whoever they can get with them, with Jerry being very honest here, saying that he doesn't want Caleb to go this round because he's worried that if Caleb does go home at 5, the other 3 and Chris, Ben, and Vision will all just flip to vote Jerry at 4, which Caleb says, yeah, that's probably the case. And Jerry tells him that he'd rather go to 4 with Caleb because at least in that world, one of the 2 will be guaranteed to make the final 3 and have a shot of winning the game. Jerry says that he doesn't trust Chris and that he's an immunity threat, but Caleb says that he doesn't think that Chris would turn on them at this point and thinks that the final 3 should be them and Chris, stating that he knows where Chris's head is at because he doesn't care who it's with, he just wants to make the final 3. Whereas Vision and Ben are much more unpredictable in his mind, with this really once again putting Jerry in the swing position, where he's stuck between the Caleb and Chris duo and the Vision and Ben duo. Vision and Caleb then talk, with Caleb saying that Ben should be the next boot, being the biggest social threat left in the game, with people liking him, to which Vision agrees, but obviously Vision is not going to be voting out Ben, come on. Ben is then next in confessional after just having broken his streak, where Ben had at least one confessional in every episode up until the previous one. Really tragic stuff here. Either way, with Ben's infinite wisdom at our fingertips, he tells us that he thought he would go last round being paranoid, but rightfully so. He went into tribal knowing he was going to get votes. He talks about the final 3 though that he formed with Jerry and Vision as well, and that he plans to stay loyal to that, which we exit the confessional and enter a conversation starring Ben and Jerry talking about being on board with the final 3 plan, with them agreeing that once they boot Caleb or Chris in this round, if the other wins immunity at 4, they will team up together and boot Vision. Jerry is next in confessional, stating once again what I brought up earlier, with Jerry being in the middle of 2 duos but wanting Chris to go home, with him believing Chris to be a slightly better competitor compared to Caleb. And there's also the factor of what he talked to Caleb about, where he does believe that if Caleb does go in this round, that in the following round they will just all team up and boot Jerry. We see Chris get his 2-minute advantage on a piston puzzle, to which he gets a confessional of, quote, this challenge sucks, I hate you, I hate this survivor, go to hell. Great stuff. And then the challenge is called Piston Puzzle, where they essentially need to use these Minecraft blocks called pistons in order to move a quartz block to a block of white wool. The first 3 to finish move on to the final round. Chris finishes first, Jerry is next, and Caleb moves on to the final round, with Ben and Vision both really struggling throughout, and Caleb winning the final 5 immunity challenge, his second immunity win of the season, where Chris then gets a confessional talking about the challenge, saying that he trusts Caleb and Jerry, but does think that there is potential for Jerry to flip. Caleb is next in confessional, also talking about the challenge, but he views it as a positive, with it being one more thing to show to the jury. Jerry. He articulates that the game is difficult at this stage because it's a balancing act, where he needs to figure out not only who he's voting out to advance in the game, but who he's leaving in the game that would be willing to take him to the final 3 while being in a situation where Caleb still beats them at the final tribal. He doesn't think that Vision would beat him. He thinks Chris and Ben are a toss-up and says that he really doesn't want to vote out Jerry, especially since he doesn't think he can get the numbers on Jerry at this point, so he just must choose to boot Ben here. We then see Jerry, Chris, and Caleb all talking together, with Chris claiming that this is the final 3 he wants, and the group very quickly settles on Ben, with Caleb and Chris telling Jerry that the other two will likely attempt to pull him in to boot Chris. Ben gets another confessional where he talks about being scared and that he knows he's been paranoid all season, but again, he also knows that Caleb and Chris are voting for him, so he's putting all of his faith in this relationship he's built with Jerry and Vision. Speaking of, we then see Ben and Jerry talk, with Ben asking if Jerry is on his side, to which Jerry obviously says yes, to which Ben then talks super openly about how he doesn't think it'd be a good idea for Jerry to side with Chris and Caleb because Chris and Caleb are likely to get votes. Going even further by saying that it'd be better for Jerry to take Ben and Vision to the end because Ben believes that Jerry would win that final 3 scenario, with Jerry saying that he's not so sure but wonders what Vision's doing, to which Ben then kind of awkwardly says that Vision is working with him but keeps claiming to be the swing vote, which again is funny because he's not. It's Jerry that's in the swing vote position here, where clearly Ben also sees this given his tone. Despite that though, we are blessed with another Vision confessional, with him saying that he's in control of the game, each duo thinking he's working with them. Then we see Ben, Vision, and Jerry talking, and Vision is just confused about what they're doing, to which the others are like, well, Caleb has immunity, so we're gonna vote Chris, obviously, to which Vision is confused. Then we see Vision and Ben talk, where Vision talks about being the swing vote, but he's with Ben and Jerry, don't worry, and Ben straight up tells Vision that if you flip on me, I'm probably not voting you to win, which is funny because Vision's not flipping, he's not the swing. Caleb and Chris get to talking next, with Caleb not thinking Chris will go since he believes Jerry is with them, to which Chris then says that he's been working with Jerry since the beginning of the game, where, like I said, the original Arcia tribe was run by Chris Allranks, Jerry, and Jakal. They started talking less in the merge due to the swap, with Chris becoming closer to Caleb and Allranks, but either way, Caleb then point blank says that this round comes down to whatever Jerry wants to do, where it'll be 2 votes on Chris from Ben and Vision, 2 votes on Ben from Caleb and Chris, and whoever Jerry sides with will win the day. Jerry is in confessional talking once again about being in the middle, being the swing vote. He's also very clearly taking this decision very seriously, where it's obvious that in his mind he's constantly weighing the pros and cons of siding with either side. Jerry and Caleb then talk, with Caleb wanting to touch base and confirm that it's Ben this round, and Vision in the following round, to which Jerry agrees. And then they joke about Vision winning immunity at 4, in which case he'll just boot Chris, which in theory means that Jerry is confirmed final 3 at this point. But either way, Chris opens the tribal asking Ben if there's a particular person everybody is going to vying for their vote, to which Ben says yeah, absolutely, obviously referencing Jerry. Chris then talks about wanting to reward whoever stays loyal, and that if he's sent to the jury, he will vote accordingly, clearly this being a thinly veiled threat towards Jerry, with Jerry then saying that loyalty is obviously an important factor in this game, but at the same time, they're at the final 5, you have to consider every option. Vision stands up and is told to sit back down, which is great, but he talks about how everyone's been saying he's a swing vote and that he decides who goes home and who stays, and he says that to the person he betrays, he hopes they know it's just because he's trying to play the best game he possibly can. Chris, the host, then pushes Vision and asks how confident he is on a scale of 1 to 10 that he's the swing vote, only for Vision to say 10, and he needs to talk to Ben and Caleb individually, asking Ben why he should side with him, which is just so funny to me, because again, Vision is not the swing vote. Vision is already locked in with Ben, where Ben says that they should be voting out the people you can't beat, to which Chris disagrees, saying that they should be voting out the people that they think will vote for them even if they get voted out, to which Jerry says that it all comes down to the jury, with it being a very situational thing. Some jury members will vote for who they like the most, who they respect the most. Some of them will just vote out of pity. Caleb then adds that he'd want to see whoever played the best game win personally, but every jury member is free to vote how they see fit. The votes come out with Ben and Vision voting for Chris as expected, Chris and Caleb voting for Ben as expected, and Jerry casting the most important vote. Ben and Chris wishing one another good luck, but in the end, Jerry voted out Chris, where Chris leaves saying that he's only going to vote for 1 of 2 people now, saying good luck to Caleb and Ben before leaving. And with that, we do lose Chris, who is such a weird figure for me on this season, where he's a big player on the season, but we really don't see much of him. where he's aligned with R-Ranks the entire season and aligned with Caleb during the swap and merge. He's not a target at all for most of the game and eventually is taken out as a matter of course, where the main three who run the table are him, R-Ranks, and Caleb. Despite that, Chris 100% feels like the least integral number to the success of that trio, despite having a close relationship to R-Ranks and Caleb did. That being said, the game Chris played is a very clean one that I don't find too much fault with, where like R-Ranks, he's in the majority for the entirety of the season, up to the R-Ranks boot when Caleb flips, where had R-Ranks played his idol, the votes then tie with 2 votes on him and 2 votes on Ben, where he just wouldn't have had the numbers, he would have just went home in a 3-1 revote, with R-Ranks likely keeping his vote on Ben. Either way, that's really the point that his game crumbles, is the final 6, where despite playing a clean game, he's flipped on by Caleb, who didn't trust him to not leak the R-Ranks boot, placing Chris on the bottom alongside his duo in R-Ranks. Once R-Ranks goes, Chris does do good work rebuilding his connection with Caleb and trying to rope in Jerry, but ultimately failing to do so in a position where it very much so comes across as Caleb having put in more work to try to convince Jerry. Either way, as a character, Chris was okay. When he was good, he was really good, but he always just didn't seem to be around, and he's certainly not a personal favorite player of mine, especially on this iconic season. With that, we move on to, once again, a 2-part finale. You want to be all-star worthy, right? Which opens up with a Ben confessional being shocked that Jerry sided with him in Vision. Jerry then gets a confessional saying that he can't believe he's made it this far. He's in the final 4, in a position where he successfully booted out 2 of the 3 players who ran the early merge, but his work isn't over yet. He doesn't think that he can beat Caleb in the end. He doesn't think that anybody left in the game can, so even though he really does not want to do it, he thinks that it's time to take the shot. We then get to the final 4 immunity challenge called 3 Keys, which I have a lot to talk through because this is a big fucking challenge. The biggest challenge that we have seen as of yet on Minecraft Survivor. Players will break a stained clay block and collect a night vision and water breathing potion. They will then swim out and break a wooden block above a chest under a totem in the water. They will collect a diamond pickaxe, the first key. They will use that to break an obsidian block that contains puzzle pieces to a staircase puzzle. Once they finish the simple staircase puzzle, they will run up the stairs and collect a second diamond pickaxe, the second key. They will then swim back out and climb the totem to break another obsidian block to unlock the third diamond pickaxe, the third key. They will use that to break one final obsidian block, giving them ladders they need to access the parkour. They will need to complete the parkour twice, on the bottom layer to collect their puzzle pieces and shears, and then on the top layer so that they can get to their puzzle station, where they will break the wool to reveal the puzzle before perfectly replicating it at their stations. Throughout the challenge, Ben says that even though it's not real Survivor, he thinks that he might pass out, to which Chris quips, "Please don't do that." And Jerry gets his key first, Ben and Vision shortly behind, with Caleb bringing up the rear. Jerry gets his second key first, followed by Ben and Caleb, with Vision now being in the back. They all get confused with the parkour needing to complete the bottom layer before the top one. Jerry gets to the puzzle first, with Vision getting to his section after Jerry has a lot of progress, weirdly Vision choosing to break his wool with his hand rather than the shears, with Jerry doing his puzzle backwards, coming to a photo finish between Vision and Caleb. And I will say, so I watched the reunion, and they did bring this up in the reunion. It was 4 frames, 4/30ths of a second that separated Vision and Caleb's finish time, with Vision cinching out the win, to which Ben congratulates Vision before saying good try to Caleb, with Jerry finishing right after those two, and Ben was completely out of it. Vision gets a confessional saying that he's going to make this game a lot more intense now that he has the power, by convincing the others to each vote one another to cause a 1-1-1 tie so that he can come in and decide everything. And Vision tells everyone that before doing one-on-ones, he wants to tell everybody that everyone played a really good game. Either way, Vision and Caleb talk first, where Caleb tells him that he knows he's probably the one to go home here, but he says that keeping him is an all-star worthy move. With Vision keeping Caleb around, it shows confidence and lives up to what Vision's been saying the whole game. Vision says that if Caleb wants to work with him, then he needs to vote out Ben because Ben wants Caleb out, and then says he's gonna go talk to Ben, to which then we see Vision and Ben talk, where Vision says, "Hey, you need to vote Jerry," to which Ben says, "No, dude, if we go to the end with Caleb, then Caleb wins. It doesn't make any sense to vote out Jerry." At least there's a shot of Vision winning in a Ben Jerry Vision final 3. Ben then asks Vision what he's doing, to which Vision says he just wants to make this more than it needs to be, and he doesn't know who he's gonna choose to vote out. We then see Ben in confessional saying that he's super stressed because he thinks it's between him and Caleb this round. He's annoyed by Vision, but is just going to go along with his stupid plan. We then see Jerry and Caleb talk, where Jerry voices his annoyance at the fact that Vision is trying to talk to him, to which Caleb says to just ignore him, where Caleb's pitch is that he wants to see the season have a good winner. A good winner in his eyes is either him or Jerry, but he's worried because the jury could be bitter and vote for Vision, and he's worried that the jury seems to love Ben's game. So by keeping both Caleb and Jerry, the likelihood of a quote-unquote good winner goes up, since he believes that in a final three of himself, Jerry, and Vision, that one of himself or Jerry is nearly guaranteed to win. We then see Vision talking to Jerry, finally, where Vision says he knows it'll sketch him out, where he tells Jerry the whole plan, where he literally says, Caleb is voting Ben is voting you are voting Caleb. As long as you vote Caleb, I'll keep you in the game. Which is so ridiculous. What are you doing here, man? Either way, Jerry says that sounds cool. Jerry is then in confessional saying that he's worried because Vision is acting like a king and Caleb is telling him that they're good, so he should be okay as long as no funny business happens. Ben and Jerry then talk, where Ben straight up says that he wants Jerry to win at this point, thinking that he can't win the game, where Jerry rebuts him saying that he already has a locked vote, but Ben fights back too, saying that it isn't enough to win, though, and he'll be just as happy with Jerry winning as he would be with himself winning at this point, which ironically then flips to Caleb and Vision talking, where Caleb is pitching about how Ben is going to win the game if he gets to the end, and that by keeping Caleb, Vision will prove himself to truly be an all-star. Caleb gets a confessional ranting about how pissed he would be if he loses the game by literally a fraction of a second, that he had to give his job application so that he may be so fortunate as to join Vision in the final three, that he just wants to vote out Ben with Jerry, and that it sucks that Vision won immunity, and relents at the end that he was so close, where you just feel so bad, man. It feels so bad for Caleb in this spot. Chris opens the tribal asking if Vision expected to win immunity, to which Vision talks about how he was in last for the challenge but made his way back. Ben then talks about being very worried, shockingly, to which Chris calls him out by asking him that he says that he's going at every single tribal, so how does Chris know that this one is real? Caleb says that there's a mix of things that are considered in his vote tonight, with it being a combination of what will get him to the end and pretty much who he needs to vote in order to have a shot at getting to that end. Ben talks about needing to vote whoever is going to get the most votes at Final Tribal. Caleb says that every relationship matters at this point in the game. Where throughout this whole debacle, Chris is also hinting that the Final 3 might not be the finals. It might be a Final 2 this season. He then turns to Jerry, asking if it would look bad to turn on an alliance now, given that there could be another round, only for Jerry to quote Big Brother, pretty much the sister show to Survivor. Not exactly, but I'm not going to get into that here, it doesn't matter. But Jerry says that you need to quote expect the unexpected, a line that I've heard on loop for the past 12 or so years. Vision says that this vote will be unexpected and it might even blow the jury's mind because he's created a scenario where he cannot be blindsided, where Vision goes up to vote with everybody but Vision in the area. Jerry then says that kid is so whack, before exposing that Vision tried to get himself, Caleb, and Ben to vote each other in front of the jury, to which Caleb funnily asks if Vision set it up right, to which Ben then tells them both to stop talking about it before Vision overhears them, which this whole situation is just so funny. After the votes are cast, Vision says that everybody better have voted the way he told them because otherwise something crazy might happen, and we get to the crazy unexpected vote. First vote, Ben. Second vote, Caleb. And then the other two votes are also for Caleb. I mean, obviously, come on, that's exactly what was going to happen. Where Caleb then tells the final three good luck with a very graceful exit on the season, and Chris reveals that it is a final three this season and sends them back to camp. And with that, we do lose Caleb, and Caleb played an incredible game on this season, really being the core of the season, where his early game is a little bit rocky, but he turns it around in the merge, really dictating the events of the season at that point. In the pre-merge, he links up with Nifty and Echo, with Echo looping in Ben to boot Shay. Caleb is then on the bottom, but it's not really his fault, where Nifty is already hardcore tunnel visioned on targeting Echo at this point in the game, and Caleb chooses to side with him, where he is blindsided at the Walker boot, gets swapped into a minority where it's him and Nifty on the bottom, where he's able to get in good with Jakal, and particularly makes a really strong bond with All Ranks and Chris, which would have most certainly saved Caleb in the event that they lost a challenge, where he would lose Nifty, but at least he would still be around. round. Either way, he wins the first individual immunity challenge of the season at the merge, links back up with Chris in all ranks as well as Echo and Ben to boot Jakal, a move that I give him and Chris the most credit for. In the following round, he flips, being the one I give the most credit for taking out Echo. He flips again, booting Nifty. He then flips again to work with Jerry to get all ranks out. All of these rounds are really great from a gameplay front. However, at the final 5, he's screwed. If he loses immunity, I think they boot him at 5. But he wins it, and he is unable to convince Jerry to go with him and Chris. At the final 4, he once again needs immunity. He's so clearly the biggest threat left in the game, and does all he can, coming up less than a second of winning immunity. Doesn't give up, keeps on pitching to both Vision and Jerry that it should be Ben to go, but it was simply too late at that point. On a character front, he was pretty fun at points. I wish he was on the season more, but he was super rootable, especially in the end game, really controlling the early to mid-merge section of the game. But again, he does kind of lose control at the end of the merge because he is just way too big of a threat at that point. With all of that, we begin the second half of the finale, with Ben being very appreciative of the two of them for keeping him around, clearly knowing that it was between him and Caleb to go in that final round. Vision says that he thinks he played the best game out of everyone, but despite that, most likely either Jerry or Ben will win, but he's not trying to be cocky at all. And then Jerry talks about being one of the first people targeted in the season, and that it's insane for him to have made it all the way here. We then get our first confessional in this half of the finale, with Jerry talking about how he feels bad, genuinely feels bad for needing to vote Caleb out in the previous round, but he knows that it was the best move that he possibly could have made. He proceeds to summarize his own game pretty well, talking about being lucky to get by in the beginning, found his way into the majority, and controlled the end game. Vision gets a confessional talking about how he was also on the bottom initially, and he talks about being the deciding votes in the tribals. He was the swing vote all along. The game was on the tip of his finger, and he should win because he played the villain game. And Ben talks about being the most paranoid player in the game, and says that he expects Vision to get at least some votes and that he'll have to go against Jerry realistically. After these, they then go through the rites of passage, with the final 3 going through the voted out players and talking about them, which I'll be skipping in this review since, first of all, this review is already long enough, and second of all, I've already given the eulogies to the players as they went out, so if you really need to see this, then go watch the episode. Following this, we get a very cinematic shot of the final 3 standing atop Mount Roraima, which you've been seeing on screen. It's the finale screenshot I used. And alright guys, I've been recording this for the last 2 hours and 47 minutes, but we're in the final stretch. It's almost there. We then begin the final tribal with opening statements, to which Vision is up first, who claims that most of the people on the jury worked with him, and he's sorry for backstabbing them. Vision believes the jury should vote for who they believe played the best game, and that he thinks it's him, since he put all of them on the jury, despite also saying that he didn't want to vote for some of them, and that some of them were blindsides to him. Either way, Ben is next, saying that he started and ended the game as a paranoid player, but even though he wasn't the best physically in the challenges, his game shined in the social aspects. People didn't really realize that he was a bigger threat than they thought he was. Some people saved him, and he brings up how in the endgame, Vision and Jerry could have taken him out, but actively chose not to. Jerry is last, saying that he started the game being targeted at the first 2 tribals he attended, and it was a wake-up call for him. He almost went home by 1 vote in the initial tribe, needing to overcome a lot of adversity as a result. He picked up his social game, proven by the fact that he didn't receive a single vote against him beyond that. And in the final 6, when he needed immunity the most, he got it. He may have played the endgame in a bit more of an aggressive manner. He made the correct bonds though that got him to where he is now. We then begin the jury questions, where Jervy is the first juror up, saying that he doesn't want answers until he requests them. He asks Ben which is the most important in this game between brains, brawn, and beauty, to which Ben kinda stumbles, eventually saying that he doesn't know. Jervy then asks Vision who was the hero, who was the villain, and who was the neutral, to which Vision obviously says that he was the villain, labeling Jerry as the hero and Ben as the neutral. Jervy then asks Jerry who he thinks will get first, second, and third. Jerry says that he's going to answer with confidence, that he's going to get first, Ben will get second, and Vision will get third. Jervy then congratulates them, saying that whoever wins deserves it, but then he goes on to say that they don't really deserve it because you guys are really bad, like the lowest on the totem pole on this season. Nifty is up next, congratulating the final 3. He tells Jerry that he believes he played a very sloppy game, but managed to play it in a very visible way that was noticed by the jury. He tells Ben that he was super paranoid throughout, and that despite that, Ben stuck through it all, never giving up and being targeted at points, especially in the endgame, which he says is more respectable than somebody like Vision. He asks Vision what his point was with the final 4 vote, which Vision says that he was the swing vote for almost half of the votes, and Nifty cuts him off saying that that wasn't the question, and reiterates asking him again what he wanted to happen at the final 4 round, because Vision was super cocky talking to the jury about something crazy happening. Vision then replies that he wanted to have his best game in line and in check, and that was what happened, to which Jerry then offers Nifty to tell him the truth, explaining that Vision came to him telling him to vote Caleb to vote Ben to vote Jerry, so that he could vote whoever he wanted out. Ben adds on that it's a show of Ben sticking with Jerry to show out his own loyalty and honor. Nifty adds on that it says a lot that Vision was a lesser figure throughout the game, finally has power in his hand, and handled it absolutely horribly, being very cocky and it blowing up in his face. Chris is next saying congratulations assholes, which was fun. He turns to Vision first, saying that Vision kept referring to himself as a swing vote, but it didn't matter which way his vote swung because he was always making final 3 with everybody by the time of the final 5 knowing to take Vision to the end so that they could beat him. He turns to Ben, talking about how Ben was targeted but made it through that, and he talks to Jerry about his comp wins. He then asks Vision and Jerry a question, not having one for Ben. Throughout the game, Chris preached on loyalty and integrity, and despite that, these two still felt the need to lie to him, so he wants to know why. Vision answers first, saying that if he were to have told the truth, he thinks the vote would have flipped back to him. Jerry then says that the reason he lied was because earlier in the game, at the Jakal boot, Chris told him that he needed to vote Nifty as a split vote, proving that Chris already lied to him previously, and that lost the trust that Jerry had in him previously. Jakal is next, saying that he knew that the more quiet players would get to the end all along. He talks about trying to throw challenges into pre-merge to get Vision out because he was annoying to him, but he won't bash on him too much because he expects that the others will be doing that more. He then turns to Ben, asking Ben how he's doing, which Ben says good. Jakal says that Ben went from expecting to be the first boot to playing a strong social game from what he gathers from the jury. He tells Ben to keep hope alive, pretty much, telling Ben that he has a real shot at this game as long as he says the right thing. Finally, he turns to Jerry, with Jerry chirping up, "It's been fun." Jakal tells him that he's the front runner to win and that he's played a good game. A shockingly, pretty tame final juror thing for Jakal here. But either way, All Ranks stands up saying, "You motherfuckers better get ready," saying that this is not the final 3 he wanted at all. He is not excited about it, that there are better people on the jury. He's gonna vote for who he thinks played the best game, with the other 2 being floaters. He tells Vision that he's delusional, talking about the swing vote stuff, and says that he was dragged to the end because people knew that they could beat him. He talks to Ben, saying that he didn't really see the game he played, but others apparently did. He turned to Jerry, saying they were cool at the beginning, kinda cool at the merge, and that it feels like Jerry played a smart game, but also a game where he just dragged 2 people to the end thinking that they would be the easy win, and that his vote should be obvious. Caleb is up next, saying that he's not upset at any of them outside of the game. He talks to Vision, saying that he told everyone that he blindsided them and was sorry about that, and that half of those were blindsides to him. Caleb doesn't want to hear that. He wants Vision to own it, be proud of the blindsides. Tell me you were in control of the game, regardless of the validity of that claim. He turns to Ben, saying that Ben was paranoid throughout the game, constantly thinking he was going home, and Caleb finds it difficult to draw the line between it being impressive that Ben survived all those votes and Ben having no control over the game. He wants Ben to give him a hard sell on why he should win over Jerry, where Ben then talks about it being difficult because Jerry's very good. He talks about needing to make the right connections at the merge and being able to clearly convince people that he should stick around and not be voted out. Caleb turns to Jerry to close it out, pretty much asking him the same thing he'd asked Ben. Caleb finds it hard to draw the line, this time not due to something like paranoia, but Jerry said earlier in his opening statement that he didn't get a single vote throughout the merge. Is that impressive social play, or is it that people wanted to drag him through the game? So he asks him to give him a hard sell on why he should beat Ben, where Jerry talks about the line being blurred and it being a mix of both. His hard sell is that after he won that immunity at Final 6, he flipped the entire game and ran it from then on. He allowed others to run the table at the start of the merge, and then when he felt he had to, he then took charge, eliminating the remaining threats. Caleb then turned to Vision, saying, "You haven't gotten much time to speak, so go ahead and give your pitch too," to which Vision says he doesn't even know anymore. People are saying he's the swing vote, and then he's not the swing vote, and that he guesses others deserve it more than him. And then lastly, Echo is last, who isn't here live, unfortunately. Chris asks the question in his stead, with him asking the final 3 that if they had to replace the people sitting next to them with jury members who who would it be, with Ben answering Echo and Nifty, Vision answering Jervy and Echo, and Jerry answering Jakal and Nifty. Chris then thanks the jury for a good 8-hour recording before reading the votes, with the votes coming out with Vision getting 0 votes, shockingly, leading to a 4-3 vote with Jerry pulling out the win. And I will say here really quickly before I get into the finalists, and this is something I didn't script because, again, I'm not scripting the reunion. Same thing I did with the season 1 thing. If you really want to watch the reunion, go watch it yourselves. I did watch that reunion, and Chris, the host, had some frustrations with this season, where, particularly talking about like this final tribal, the jurors all came off as just very bitter, very spiteful, but then also there's the aspect of Echo not being there, specifically because the cast, specifically the jury, was leaking information. Now, obviously, this is, I think, 8 or 9 years ago at this point, so what does it matter now? But the jury on the season did not keep their mouths shut, so much so that they knew that the vote was 3-3, but they did not know who the final vote was, because Echo wasn't there. So then, in that specific aspect, Echo did know who won the season, because his vote decided everything, but the rest of the cast didn't actually find out who won the game until the finale episode aired, which is so funny to me. But either way, let's wrap up this very long video, please. We're gonna wrap that up with the finalists, where first up we have Vision, and Vision plays a horrible game across the season. He does get to the end, that is commendable, but his game is dreadful. Before I pick that apart though, let me say that I absolutely love Vision as a character. I vividly remember watching this season way back at the time that season 3 was coming out, which I'm not going to look up how long ago that was because it's going to make me sad, but I remember really disliking Vision at that point. Then I rewatched the show a couple months ago at that point and loved Vision. And through this very meticulous third watch and now script and now recording and soon editing, I can say with full confidence that Vision, unintentional, intentional, it's riveting TV. He's so good. But let's rip apart this game because, oh god. He goes for the first tribal of the season, aligned with Jervy and Thomas, just to lose Thomas, where Vision wastes his idol on himself. He then gets swapped alongside Jerry and Jervy. He should be in the majority here, with easy pickings on Ben and Echo, but he still doesn't like Jerry, so he tries voting him out again and fails again, losing Jervy in the process, despite Jervy trying to keep him and Jerry in line. Then, at the final 9, he's not looped in on the Jakal boot. He's not looped in the final 8 when Echo goes home. He does vote Nifty out, that's good. And from then on, he's dragged to the end by Jerry once Jerry starts to run the table, getting to the end with zero respect from the jury with his constant unnecessary lies, attempted and subsequently failed moves. The final 4 round in particular is horrible. I get what he's trying to do. On paper, it makes sense. The problem is it was never going to happen. It was entirely ridiculous, completely blows up in his face. There was also the whole thing about him lying about the second idol with the Ender chest, which didn't make any sense. He constantly threw out final 2, final 3, final 4 deals, which again, it's just, he's overplaying. In the event of a final 2 on this season, assuming that he got there with Ben, I fully believe that Ben wins the game, probably unanimously. Still though, throughout all of that, even though I do think that his game is horrible, he is at least a finalist. And again, as a character, he's incredible. One of the best on the entire season. Next up, we have Ben, and I liked Ben a lot on all of my watches, this one probably the most so, where Ben can largely be surmised as this constant paranoia agent, which is fun to see with his constant emotional whiplash from being scared he was leaving to relief at having stayed. As far as the game he played on this season, it's definitely not the best on the season, but it's also very far from the worst, and I think my assessment on his game is relatively higher than I would have expected, where he flips the first tribal he attends. I don't think that's the wrong call. I think that him linking up with Echo was good for his game, even if that meant losing Shay, since it really put him and Echo in the middle, especially since Walker had immunity in that spot, and Ben is the only one at that side in danger of being rocked out, so I definitely get his hesitation there. At the Walker boot, him and Echo do ultimately fail at what they were trying to achieve, but I do think it was Ben's call to flip Echo to vote Walker with him to get Walker out. A very risky play, but it's one that worked out. He then gets into a majority alliance and in a merge with him and Echo teaming up with All-Ranks Chris and Caleb to boot Jakal, where again, it's another position where him and Echo are in the swing vote position. They can side with them or they can side with Jakal. He's then on the outs on the Echo boot, but I really don't hold that against him. Obviously, you have to fault him a little bit, but it's also a position where Echo is his number one ally and everybody knows that. So whether Echo went at Final 8, Final 7, Final 6, Final 5, Ben was always going to be in the dark for that. But either way, it's after Echo goes home that I do think that his game gets better, despite the fact that he's in the minority in the next round, but don't worry about it. Afterwards, he sides with Nifty to try to boot Caleb and fails. But again, to me, this is still the point where his game does start to shine. From that point on, he's, again, similar to Vision, being dragged by Jerry, but he doesn't make the mistakes that Vision makes. I will give him more credit than Vision for this entire section of the game, because even though Ben was being targeted by the minority, at least he was a semblance of a threat, and clearly he had win equity still. Where I do think he loses to all of All-Ranks Chris and Caleb, he gets to the end in his best case scenario, still loses, and that's a problem, but he loses by one jury vote. If he'd convinced Caleb or Echo to vote for him, he wins the season. I think that All-Ranks and jury were always going to vote for Jerry. It's kind of a lost cause, but still, despite being this overly paranoid player, I do think that Ben played a fairly strong game, more solid than I expected for sure coming into this. And lastly, we have the winner of the season, Jerry, who thankfully has made my job easy by detailing the events of his game at Final Tribal. He starts the game with Jakal being his number one ally. He says that he was targeted by Vision the first 2 tribals he attended, but he got out of it, allowed others to run the start of the merge, was left out of the Jakal boot. He does vote in the majority following that though, voting out Echo and Nifty, which was imperative for him. The big knock I have against Jerry's game is also the biggest height of Jerry's game, and that's the Final 6, where at the Final 6, if All-Ranks wins that immunity, I think Jerry is screwed. I don't think Caleb would have turned on Chris at that point in the game. I don't think that move would have been worth it for him. However, Jerry does secure immunity, allowing for the All-Ranks blindside to go through, which really primes Jerry's game, where I do think it's mostly both him and Caleb that make that move, more so Caleb, but I think that Jerry benefits from that move more than Caleb does, with him now being in the middle of 2 duos, siding with Ben and Vision, which was the obvious call to make, and is successfully able to boot Caleb at 4 for the win. It's a very impressive end game, but a very shaky early game. There's also the fact that he actively burns Chris on his way out, causing him to vote for Ben at the end. He is not able to get Jakal's vote despite him being the number one ally supposedly, but then also Jakal voted out of sympathy, thinking that Ben was probably not gonna win anyway, so he just kind of threw his vote there. But at the end of the day, he also doesn't get Nifty's vote either. All in all, Jerry does play a solid winning game though, one that is less dominant than Andrea's last season, but at least Jerry attended double the amount of tribals she did. And with that, this very, very long review comes to an end. Coming into this review, I can say that season 2 here was a top 3 season of the show for me, arguably top 2. And I think that mostly stays the same. It's a very iconic season to me, a lot of nostalgia, as a truly great post-merge. I could have lived with a stronger Final 3, but I digress. Either way, just like my Minecraft Survivor Shortwood review, I will not be covering the reunion. If you want to go watch that yourself. I have links to the Elite Chris 35 YouTube channel, the Minecraft Survivor Season 2 playlist, and the Minecraft Survivor Wiki in the description. Again, like I said in the beginning, the wiki has spoilers for all seasons, so do navigate with care. Expect a player ranking to come out following this video at some point before I begin work on the Season 3 review, which genuinely, I'm just gonna put this out there now. It'll be a bit for the Season 3 review, because this takes a lot out of me, man. I've been talking for the past 3 hours and 6 minutes. My voice is so fucking dead. It's so dead. But either way, I will see you guys next for the Season 2 player ranking after 29,650 words, more than that, and a voice that I assume is very, very dead at this point of recording. I bid you all adieu. As always, take care, y'all.